pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Changes and additions to the agenda. John has requested, so some of these action items be moved up right after the consent agenda, so that Stephanie and Teresa will be able to leave a little early before we get to the discussion of the presentations. So I think we will do that if that's all right.
If Stephanie's able to be here, definitely Ann and Amy are here regarding those. It's not an issue, board, to hold until the end of the presentations, either way.
Any other changes or additions? Oh, sorry. Any other changes or additions?
No, not
All right.
others. Thank you.
It's time for public comment regarding our agenda items only right now. Do we have anyone who would like to comment at this time? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Everything is in here, and is there anything that anyone would like to pull out for discussion? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second, anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. We're moving on to item 100-19, the approval of our personnel compensation increases. John, do you have a comment you'd like to make or anything you'd like to say?
No, that was all part of the consent.
Oh, it is?
agenda, so
Okay.
that's been
All
approved.
right.
So no, you're all
Sorry.
set, other than just
Didn't
to
know
say thank you again, board. There's been a lot
All right.
of tears and a lot of happy tears, so thank you for what you've done.
All right. Moving on to the action items. We have the item 101-19, the approval of the additional course offerings we discussed. Stephanie's not here, so anything to
know that-
add? Anyone have
I
anything?
know that she was hoping to be, I apologize.
That's okay.
She hasn't been feeling 100%.
All right.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Only discussion would be that some of these have been in our course catalog before, primarily statistics, but you didn't find it, because it had to have been approved because it was taught for 2 or 3 years.
You know, I personally didn't look. Jenna, when Steph talked to you, did that come up at all? Yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't hurt. But we'll make that known in the minutes if that was just a kind of redux to what was already there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question concerning just the selection of the courses. John, I wrote you this morning concerning the curriculum committee. I wasn't talking about the board. I was talking about the teachers.
Mhm.
My understanding, there was a curriculum committee of teachers, and I'm not sure that they were involved in the discussion. Some teachers were, but I'm not sure the actual curriculum committee was brought to.
I'm not familiar with a teacher curriculum committee. Carrie, do we have a teacher curriculum committee? So in my response to Rick this morning, one of the things after I touched base with Steph was just to assure that she had visited with all the departments that these changes would affect, and she did. She did meet with potential teachers that could teach these courses and what that commitment would mean for them, especially with the AP courses. And so, and she met, my apologies, Rick, but she did meet with all of the current AP teachers to get their take on what these additional AP courses might look like as well.
And my question really wasn't related to these courses, because I believe, based on what she said and how she went through it, that
Yeah.
you know, these are needed to make sure that we try to keep students here and not have them go somewhere else. It was more in line with, were there other courses that we should be offering in addition?
Based on her survey information and the data that she showed you, these were the ones we felt that were the highest need. Could there be additional ones?
I'm just,
Yeah. Could there be additional ones?
question.
Absolutely, Rick. I think that's really a fair question, and one that, again, it's just fun to explore. I mean, are there other world languages that we could potentially offer? I know there are trade courses that we'd love to be able to put back in the curriculum, like woodshop, right? Those types of things. So more to come yet into the springtime, but we'll make sure that that doesn't get lost.
Well, like I wrote you, I was comfortable with what she.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and I think part of that, years ago, folks, we used to have a pretty large, upwards of 15 curriculum committee members. And again, as I outlined, you know, the curriculum committees I've been involved with have involved parents, obviously your teachers, your principals, at least 3 board members, and at times even students. So I think that's one of those committees that can be a little more broad-reaching. But the one that we haven't obviously put together.
Up until about maybe 4 years ago, our curriculum committee consisted of teachers of the secondary, the principals, teachers at teachers at elementary. And teachers would propose a course, like, you know, Chris Herman came to the curriculum committee years ago and said, I want to teach ABUS. And they would discuss it, they would then propose it to the board with their consent. I don't know why that sort of fell apart, but that had been the path for many years.
Yeah, and I think that's still a path that can very much be looked at and be used once again. And just, I can't remember if Steph shared this with us last week or not, but one of the reasons we wanted to get this before you this month, if possible, was so that if it is approved, it can go into the course catalog so that students can be looking at this for second semester course choices for some of these. Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to start any of these APs.
No.
At this time, but he'll start doing scheduling in February. And so to have the choices in front of the kids is key.
That's it. Thanks, Jenna. Great questions.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Board.
102-19, approval of positions, student support liaison and elementary and student support interventionist secretary. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion?
John, could you just kind of run through again?
Yeah, I'd like to know too, the details.
I have a little different flavor at each end of the building for the secondary program. The student support interventionist, kind of that last word will give you a better sense of how things. They're going to be working with tardy issues, whether that's at the start of the day, throughout the day. They'll be responsible for any in-school suspension monitoring. They will. Oh, gosh, I know Jenna Steph has talked to you about this. I believe she has. Starting to assist Bethany Onthank with some of the testing coordination and oversight with that. Helping with student issues, monitoring, whether that's hallways, lunchroom, assisting with activities in the evening. So so there will be some evenings for them. For the elementary, where it's the student support liaison, it's going to be almost kind of a bridge between the teacher and Tarina. One of the things that the teachers have talked to us about, and some great conversations there, is they'd still like to see Tarina be the one in charge of discipline. That doesn't really get turned over to the SSL in this case. they really love the way Trina's connecting with the kids, the way that she's providing, an opportunity to learn a lesson and not just, again, discipline is what you do for someone, not what you do to someone. And they really see that in Trina. So they don't want to lose that, and I don't ultimately think Trina wants to lose that either. So this person's going to be working with counselors, with staff, when we have students that get elevated, be able to spend time working with them, contacts with parents as needed. They won't be sitting in, well, there will be some of those meetings that they'll sit in with students and parents, because they'll be part of that intervention team as well as at the lower L. But for the elementary board, it's going to be a lot of just taking care of, get kind of those low-level brush fires that can really eat up a principal's day, keep her out of the classroom, keep her from maybe dealing with some of the larger issues. So as you have the job descriptions before you, part of what we'll do is we'll get wiser as we go along. We'll find some things will work and some things won't, and we'll amend it, we'll modify it.
So in-school suspension would be secondary one?
Definitely for secondary, yeah. He's the person that's helping with that now, depending on who's chosen, but they oversee in-school suspensions right now and that monitoring, correct.
Any further? Oh.
I have a question as well. So going through, like, I don't know how much the job descriptions have changed since we saw them last week. But looking through them, especially the high school one, I feel like there are a lot of, like, sort of lower level administrative type duties. And I also think that if there is a teaching certificate required, is that yes? Is that still true? Do you know?
It is. The hope is that that person can step in and take care of a classroom when a teacher is, for instance, in an IEP, and we're not putting a non-certified person to cover that classroom, so that's part of that desire. We also hope that if they've been through their methodology courses and they know how to deal with student management issues, that will play well for them. At least that's the hope, Leah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I echo that hope that, right, I think that especially at the secondary role, that this is a job that requires some pretty in-depth knowledge of how to work with kids and that sort of brain development and all of those things. I guess one of my questions is if it's a teaching certification required job, why is it not on the teaching scale, or why are they not part
Not
of it?
an instructor. It's not an instructional position. There's no responsibility for lesson plans, evaluations of students, teaching any of our core courses. It'll all be, again, trying to make sure that the lid doesn't come off on any given day and to be there to support the administrator. And so, Leah, for instance, paraprofessionals kind of take on at times a pseudo instruction role, when they're helping in a Title I room or with reading labs or math labs, all under the direction of the certified instructor. That'd be the case for this SSI. Obviously, there might be some pseudo administrative tasks, paperwork, phone calls, but always working under the direction of the high school principal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
I just was curious if we will be having interviews.
Postings will go out tomorrow morning if this is approved by the board this evening. Postings will close on December 31st, interviews January 6th, that week of the 6th, and then a possible recommendation to you on January 13th at our regular meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The next item is 10319, the approval of the Sex Ed Committee. We have numbers listed here. Amy, I don't know if you have anything you want to speak to in this, or? Okay.
Spent a lot of time and gave it a lot of time on the website. Thank you, Jordan, for getting that all set up and posting. We had, like 13 people apply,
great group, Amy. Corey, great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, outstanding.
Do you feel that there were any people who would feel excluded, like they wanted to be on, and just there were too many that?
Responded after we sent out the emails, and John helped me create that email. I asked for his help and guidance in that. And only one person responded and said, well, who's on it? And I just, emailed back saying, hey, yes, we really would love to continue input.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Right. Yep. Right. Any more discussion? I guess we need to make a motion first.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, it's time for our
So Lisa-
presentations.
Yes, our first presentation tonight. We're very excited. It's great to have Dan Lamore here, one of the senior vice presidents for the Chrisman Company. He'll introduce his staff and his team that he has with us tonight. But Board, as you know, we've been able to meet with Dan a couple of times, with his team once. We've been very impressed by their efforts, and just based on what I've seen as they were setting up tonight, I think we'll have just a great experience, both seeing and hearing and learning more about Chrisman and some of the thoughts they have about a potential project for us here at Glen Lake. So with that, Dan, why don't we turn time over to you?
Thank you. Well, I can get started while you're waiting. Is that coming up shortly? So far, I'm very impressed. Very professional, organized board. Where Glen and I spend a lot of time in front of school boards, and we see all kinds of different things. We see very casual and very loose, and here we see very professional. We even have seen board meetings where they're eating tacos in front of us. So,
That's a good idea. I like that, John.
So we have a lot of stuff to share. I have a lot of things that I wanted to hand out. I don't have quite enough hands now that I have to handle a microphone, so I need one of those things they have at church where you wear the microphone on your head. So I think we'll just start out. Everyone's going to introduce themselves in a minute, but my name's Dan Lamore. We are just truly grateful and appreciative to be here with you tonight. Ever since the first call that we got in the summer to be considered to come here and work with you, it's been on our radar the whole time, and we're really excited to be here. We love working in K-12 education, and for the reason that it's a chance to serve community through our work. You don't get to do that with everything we do, everything that we work on, but get a chance to serve community when we work through schools. So we're very grateful for that. We're also grateful because we think that we can be successful here. We have experience and expertise that we'll share that we think will lend well to what you're doing, and so it's always good to work in a place where be successful. And then we're pretty deeply rooted in Northwest Michigan. So Brad, who's going to introduce himself, is from Petoskey, lives in Petoskey. Colleen is from Manistee, and I'm from Annekama. So we're kind of got you surrounded. Those are the reasons why we're really glad to be here. Who's got the clicker? Can you go back? One more. So we wanted to talk about the vision, and I wanted to provide a clarification before we introduce the team. We have prepared a presentation based on examples, and we feel like that's the best way to do presentations, based on current examples or based on past examples, really lessons learned. So a lot of our content is about that. So a lot of our content is about a conceptual project that we've talked about with some of you. We've met about half of you so far now. And so a lot of what you're going to see on the boards and on the screen and some of our discussion is about that. And I just want to clarify respectfully that we recognize that the board hasn't approved any project, and we don't even know if or what there is a project, but it allows us a tool to talk to you, so you can see how we work, how we solve problems, how we interact with you. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. John, do you want to comment on that?
No, that's spot on. Thanks, Dan. So, board, in fact, Dan visited with me before the meeting tonight just to say who is this going to be okay? In essence, what Chrisman has done is take the information, just conceptual things that the community has talked to me about, at least, of things they'd like to see in a potential project that I put up on the whiteboard. And I think the initiative that they've shown and what they want to share with you tonight is very valuable, and I sure support that, Dan, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've taken it pretty far. I guess we'll say we're in the world of pretend for tonight, probably. Whether we're talking about the bus garage, which is a need, or a community center, which is a desire, it doesn't really matter, other than the community center is more complicated and it lends better to our conversation. But it isn't more important than a bus garage. Whether we're talking about either one of those projects, we want to achieve the vision together, and that's really what we want to discuss tonight. It's all about teamwork to us. We want to take all of the people with individual skills, our construction people, our architect, all the board members, our facilities person, and bring out that individual skill of each one of us and build a team together so that we can work collaboratively and be successful. Bus garage, or community center, or renovation in the school, it's all the same. Do you guys want to take a minute and introduce yourselves? Brad, you want to go first? Sure.
As Dan said, I'm Brad Kranig, Senior Project Manager with the Chrisman Company. Northern Michigan resident, Petoskey area with my wife and family. Been with the Chrisman Company nearly 20 years and pretty much exclusively worked in the Northern Michigan market on various projects. A couple of personal things about me. I love the outdoors. I'm an avid camper, hiker, skier, and spend most of my personal time at this point assisting my kids on their robotics teams with middle school and high school. So, and again, very grateful for the opportunity to present to you tonight, and look forward to any opportunities that can come from this.
Well, good evening. I'm Scott Hook, Senior Superintendent with the Chrisman Company. Nearly 31 years of construction experience, and a lot of that with K-12 schools, doing athletic facilities, auditoriums, pools, things that you guys are, I guess, contemplating, let's say. So I would just look forward to utilizing that experience to work with you guys as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kalina Kolakowski, and I just want to say it's a great feeling to come in this room and to visit with you. You have a great energy, and it's nice to be here for the second time. Well, I thought it was the second time. I was having lunch with my dad today, and he reminded me that I cheered in your gym. I went to Manistee Catholic, and we played you guys in basketball. We were not successful, but it was the first time my dad saw a Class D guy dunk, so he remembered it very well. I love Northern Michigan. It's like coming home, and so I am grateful to you for the opportunity to try to work for you. I might have turned the mic off, I'm not sure. But, okay, it's on. Thank you.
Lena, why don't you come down here? You're kind of hiding behind there. Okay, so let's just, I think.
I'm sorry, I got a comment that it was coming from the story.
Okay, so we're good?
You're good.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, so let's just dig into our agenda. We want to start with just taking a look at the agenda that we prepared. And we just want to ask you, is that everything that you want to see tonight, or is there anything missing? We've made this agenda based on our past working experience on projects and also past interviews like we have tonight. So just want to take a minute and see if there's anything else you want to add. I have one thing to add, John, and that's what you sent to me on Saturday for fees and contract. So I'm going to just write that on the bottom.
I wasn't sure if that was going to fall under your costs and schedule. No, please, thanks.
Okay. Anybody see anything else that's missing? You want to write that? I can't bend down.
Teamwork.
Well, you wouldn't read it if I wrote it, so. My kids are always mocking me because my hand shakes so much, so that's why I can't use a pointer, because I'd make you all nauseous, I think. All right, so we keep going then with that? Nothing else to add? Okay, can you take the cap back, please? All right, and you want to, okay, so the next slide is just an overview of Chrisman, just to give you a feel for who we are. So starting out, Chrisman was formed in 1894. We have a history book that we just made recently that's pretty thick and pretty interesting book. I'm quite fascinated by what people did in 1894 and 1920 and through the Depression. I'm bored about the part that's now because it's not history, but I'm really fascinated how they were able to do the things that I do back in the 1920s. 1894, that's 125 years or so. Just a couple metrics on there. On the lower left-hand corner, number 93. So of the construction firms in the nation, we're the 93rd largest as far as annual revenue per year. In the right-hand corner, you see that we have completed in Michigan $1.1 billion of K-12 education over the last few years. So there's just metrics that we wanted to show you. What really matters, I think, more than anything on that slide is this phrase on the bottom, nationally known and locally respected. And so that means a lot to us, because what that means is we can provide experience and expertise from lessons learned throughout the nation working with other districts or other communities or projects and bring those applications to you. But the project is led by people that work and live in our communities. So we're regionally led by our leadership. So for instance, I will lead every project that's in West Michigan. And we just feel like that's the best way to handle business in our communities. This slide represents our K-12 educational experience in Michigan over the last 25 years or so. This is the $1.1 billion that I had mentioned. We put them in groupings, and you can see the West Michigan area is very heavy on K-12 education, and that's really because that's where I live, and that just kind of just lends itself to that. And then you notice also the northwestern Michigan bubble is pretty large. So we have currently 14 districts that we serve. And they start and they fall off as the project's finished. But we have 14 districts in either the pre-bond phase or the design phase or the construction phase. And that's just a really comfortable amount for us to be able to balance all of those districts. It's very manageable. Some of the relevant experience on this slide, I want to point to some of that. So in a community center project, there's performing arts, there's pool possibly, there's gymnasium, the culinary arts. We've worked on a lot of projects that add very relevant experience. And we want to bring those experiences. So this collage is just an example of some experiences that are applicable to some of the discussions and decisions that we would make here. So, for instance, if you take performing arts, there's so many decisions to make in a performing arts center that affect cost. There's a fly loft or not, and there's acoustics, and there's lighting system and sound system, and there's configuration of the building itself. This is Sparta Schools, and when we take people on site visits to see Sparta Schools, the thing that's noticeable is the low slope tier and the high slope tier. And the reason for that was to save money, because then we could make the building itself smaller by having the sloping steeper. But some districts, when we take them in, they don't like that because it's not as convenient, it's not as comfortable. So that's why I say that there's lots of decisions that are made that are your own individual decisions that can affect, Performing Arts Center can cost $400 a square foot. So we can impact that by $20 or $30 or $40 a square foot, which is very significant. So you want to, Kalina, talk about community interaction?
I do.
Yes, I realized in my excitement for telling you how excited I was to be here, I didn't tell you what I do. So I have the privilege of working with our K-12 partners on building community support and selling bond campaigns. So my role at Chrisman is business development, and so this is my favorite part. Everything that you're about to embark on is about community, and I think that's what Dan meant when he said why we love to serve K-12 so much, because we get to serve the community of Glen Lake. And so starting with when you're ready to say this is what we're doing, it's all about aligning the community to your vision and Superintendent Hoover's vision, and helping them to see that this is their project too. So we suggest you do that in a couple different ways, which are community forums and going out to where they are, listening and reflecting back, and allowing a little bit of flexibility so that they can feel like this is their project. I have to tell a story, I don't know if you can see it, but the letter on the right is a letter that was sent out by some key senior citizens from Ludington. And there's a point in a bond election where I'm just helping. I'm just pretty much a door knocker and a paper pusher, and the community really takes over, and it becomes their own. And these individuals that signed this letter, half of them didn't live in the district full time. They were snowbirds, but they said, there's no way we're going to let this fail. And so what they did is they signed a letter. They sent it to everyone who was going to vote absentee, because we can help identify who those absentee voters are. And then they personally signed it with why they were supporting it. They followed that up with a full-page ad every day before the election, which was a little unique to Ludington, but that gets to my next point. That mitten that Dan showed, every single one of those districts is unique, and we have a lot of best practices that have worked very well, but really we need you, the school, and the community to tell us how your people like to receive their news, how they like to respond to information, and then we can develop a campaign that works. One thing we know that's really unique about your district, and we're excited to talk about it more tonight, is the 3 funding mechanisms you're looking at. If the board does approve to go forward with a bond issue, that's where I could help. But I still think it's very important that even if you don't, the community alignment is critical so that the community feels like this is their school and their project. I'm excited. You're building a multi-generational building. You're going to have the ability to let your senior citizens interact with your students, and that's just so cool. I commend you for that. This slide is going to come up again later in our presentation, but as I'm talking right now, it's a continuum of communication. So we're constantly talking to the community, we're constantly getting feedback. Until we go into campaign mode, then we're selling. But this is still an ongoing, evolving process, and I get really passionate about it. I want to end with a couple of examples of stories where the community sold the bond, and we just provided the marketing support and the coordination for them. Wyoming Public Schools, Lansing School District, and Ludington. Very, very great community-driven campaigns, community-driven superintendents who it was their vision, and we went out into the community and helped align the community with what they hope to do. So happy to answer questions now or at the end, whatever you feel. But otherwise, I'm going to pass it off to Brad.
All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about cost and schedule certainty, and the importance and the key for these for success of your project. There's a couple of items that are very specific and very aligned with that, and they start with planning and procurement well before construction begins. Our focus during the planning stage of that, one of the key things that we will do is in-depth constructability reviews. We look to utilize that process early on with our site staff to review documents, review the plans as they're set up, and look for any potential pitfalls or opportunities early on in the process so that things can be modified and adapted to suit that. An example I have is a recent project I just completed where the schedule was dictating that we would be doing structural masonry walls on the auditorium throughout the winter. We were looking at that early on, had a lot of concerns regarding schedule, safety, cost, a number of additional items related to that, and we were early enough in the process where we worked with the design team and modified the design, enlisted a precast fabricator, and shifted that construction into precast paneled walls. This it seems, one lane or one facet of that, but it truly eliminated months of masonry work in the winter and we had the walls of the auditorium erected in just over a week. And that was in January on Lake Michigan. So it was a significant win, I feel, on our end, and it all stemmed from early review and in-depth review, the things that we typically will look for on a job. The other thing I want to talk about regarding procurement and planning is working within our marketplace, having long-term relationships in northern Michigan, looking to tap our partners, our subcontractor community for their involvement early on. We will bounce things off of them, utilize them for their expertise, look to get insight on what their trends are for local labor, where costs are going, how that may affect our schedule. We look at that as a positive because it promotes buy-in from that community, and their understanding and early knowledge of the projects creates a buzz and really gets them engaged and ready and earmark this project as one that they're eager and anxious to go after. The buyout or the procurement aspect of it, when you are to the point of bidding out work, we look to detail work scopes specifically to suit the northern Michigan market. There are differences in how the contractors approach work here than in other areas. With our relationship with them, we look to suit those work scopes and tailor the details of their work based on their expertise and their manpower and their size. We also look at that as again, to restate or reinforce their willingness to do work on the project and excitement to be able to bid the work. Once we're through the planning and stage, and into procurement, we got to move into construction. We're anxious to do that part, but we don't want to rush it as well. During construction, communication is key. For cost and schedule, we want to be the pulse of information and make that available to you as required and as easily as possible. A couple of the tools that we use for accurate and up-to-date reporting and record keeping. There's a couple examples that we brought with us. We utilize a dashboard CM report. It's meant to be a concise one-page, two-page document that really gives a snapshot of any current issues, any status, financial update, schedule update, and then we back that up with detailed, comprehensive financial reports through our Viewpoint system, and that is an up-to-date mechanism that we can utilize for current cost and projections, and can generate reporting at touch of a button. So keeping you informed throughout the process so that you can make hard decisions when things come up. Just really wanting to have that insight and that knowledge at your fingertips. Construction update is the other item that you passed out as well. We frequently use that on projects as another means to communicate. I've done them as articles in the school newspaper or something that can be issued through the community, and it can again be a small blurb, paragraph, something along those lines to give insight or project status update, and again inform people who are interested parties. One of the other items I wanted to speak about just briefly was our use and leverage of technology. We will utilize technology. Our subcontractors will utilize technology. We find it as a essential item. You'll see Scott out with his iPad. Our subcontractors with their iPads will load all of the documentation for the project so it's at the contractor's fingertips. This again, for schedule and cost certainty, helps to eliminate any potential for missed details or missed changes that are in process so that we can cut short any costly oversights or rework. Those cost time and schedule. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Dan, and he can talk about some of our in-house planning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just stop a second. Any questions or change in agenda before we keep going? Otherwise, we're going to shift into planning and the mystery project. Rick, where are you going?
I was just going to, so let's talk about your process. So we decide to do something, and we have a subcommittee, maybe of the board and other people involved, and works with them to figure out what the educational program is for the community, as to what our thoughts are, and then also get input from the community as to what their thoughts are, and have forums and, whatever it is that we need to do to educate. Once we get to the point where we've decided this is what we want to do, do you help us find an architect at that point in time? Do you have architects on your staff, or how does that work?
Every situation is really different. I would say more commonly, we help the owner find an architect. Sometimes the architect's already on board before we get there, and so that's why I suggest the variables. But we're trying to create a team and collaborative approach, so it's very common for us to help you write a request for proposal, help interview architects, and help you make a decision. But we're flexible.
Okay, so now we'll ask the architect, we have an architect, we get some drawings, detailed enough that we can get, so do you submit those then to your subcontractor community to get bids, and then present those to us, and we select who we want at that point in time? How does that work?
Yeah. So there's two answers to that. When we go back to part of the agenda, we're going to talk about the planning component. So the first answer to that is we have in-house planning and in-house estimating, but we do go to the contractor community to get checks to make sure we are very current with the market and get their input. And also, in the case like that, it helps get buy-in from the community when it comes time to supporting a bond issue or project. The second answer to that is Michigan School Code requires competitive bidding for anything over a threshold. And so we will act as a construction manager on your behalf to solicit bids for all work categories. So we will split it up into 25 to 30 work categories and get competitive bids, do public advertising and all the appropriate process to make sure that we get competitive bids, and which should net in the lowest possible price.
We're hearing from the community
That we're going to need to make sure, like mine, is turned on. So whenever you are speaking, if you could have yours on and a little bit closer. Great. Alicia, is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, we said they can only hear John and Lisa.
Okay.
They were texting me.
All right. Great. Thanks.
We need those that they had in the play.
I was going to say that would be the ticket.
That would actually be awesome.
Dan, I know that I've been through a few building projects where the architect and the construction management team have kind of worked hand in hand within those community forums. Have you had that experience as well, or do you bring them on later in your projects?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm loud again. We like to have the architect on board because there's inevitably a question pertaining to the design or to the what the building's going to look like and feel like, and that architect really is a great partner at that time. So yes.
Great. I know that's been my experience as well, and I think when they hear it right from those particular parties, they can help process with the entire group how that might look when they start putting pencil to paper. So
Yeah, really, the timing varies on every project, but by some point, the whole team is assembled to make the final decisions. And part of our message for planning, that I'll probably have to cut it out now in the preceding part, but it's what I said earlier. We really need to find the individual strengths of each of the partners and bring it together and work collaboratively so we can support each other and make each other successful. And that's where the architect comes in for sure.
great, thank you.
Okay, I forgot where I was now. Can you go back a slide, please? So we do want to talk about our planning services briefly. And the reason being is because planning is so important for the success of a project. For a project to be successful, we need to make the key decisions at the very beginning. And so we invest heavily in planning, and we have 27 people in our planning department, cost estimators and leaders. And we also have in-house mechanical electrical expertise, which is something that I think nobody else in Michigan has. We feel like that investment is really important to be able to have a holistic view of the whole construction process. We ask our planners to focus on cost leadership, not just cost reporting. Cost reporting causes us to design and then go backwards and design and go backwards. Cost leadership allows us to have a coordinated design and budget, and we keep moving forward. And we make, so the goal is to really make informed decisions and add value. Before you go, I want to go back to that slide once more. The Pareto, the graph on the right-hand side, is a tool that planners use. And the reason that's important, if we're analyzing costs of a project and we're trying to reduce costs or make some changes, you notice on the very upper bar is it's HVAC systems. My eyes are old. So if we want to have a dramatic impact on the cost of a project, those bars help us determine where to focus our energy. If we focus on the smaller bars on the bottom, which is probably interior finishes or painting or something like that, we're not going to impact the project. If we focus on the upper bars, we have a chance to make million-dollar decisions. So it's really an important tool to use. This chart is really the chart that, no, can you?
Oh, here we go. I have close enough.
Give him the clicker. This is cleanest chart that you saw before, the progression of community engagement, but also our planning group and our construction group has a role in that because we can feed into the community engagement by providing deliverables. And the little yellow bars on the bottom, we start out with a conceptual cost model, which is things like providing a cost model of something like we're showing on the board tonight. And we can do a facility assessment of the needs of the existing facilities. We can prepare accurate cost information for a treasury application if you were to choose to do a qualified bond application. And we also can do continual estimating through the design process so that we have this coordinated design and budget. Another key topic that we want to talk about is value analysis. And value analysis is really being able to provide an equal or greater product, whether it's a system or a component of the project, at a lesser cost. And that's what this chart shows. So in the case of the Dwight Rich Performing Arts Center in Lansing, the green line represents the bond budget, and the blue line represents where we started with schematic design with all of the input from staff, the users, that they wanted more than what the bond application would allow. So you see how it peaked there at the end of design development. We had a value analysis session where we identified key items to lower the costs, and we were able to take a little over $1 million out of the project and not disrupt function or complexity or use. They ended up very happy with it. And that's a collaborative effort with the architect, with people in this room, that it can prove to be very, very successful. Another thing that we really are excited to do is provide design support. Now, we are not the designers, but we have so much experience around the nation with schools and other projects that there's just so many lessons learned. There's so many things that we've seen that we want to be able to help. And it goes back to the comment earlier, we want to help everyone else be successful. We want to take our architect partner, stand alongside him and help him be successful. Help have a coordinated budget and design and bring out creative ideas. So this is a 3D version of the conceptual community center that we talked about. Again, clarifying it's not an approved project, it's a example to talk about. And what we wanted to do is take our experience and test fit all of the components of the community center and make sure, number one, they fit on the site. Number two, that they're contiguous to each other and there's adjacencies that work. Number three is having the field house be adjacent to the bleachers so the press boxes can be above that and take advantage of that. There's a lot of different things that go into that. So if we take the auditorium, so when we've had our meetings this summer, we know that possibly if you were to build a performing arts center, you probably need 500 seats, probably. And so we know from experience that that takes 24,000 square feet by the time you have 500 seats in a green room and scene shop and such. The auxiliary gym that we put on this model, we know that there's been a discussion that you wish that you could have a 94-foot competitive court and 2 cross courts, so that takes 12,000 square feet. So we just went through all the things and tried to size them appropriately, and that's where this ended up. We also have this 2D model that these are removable, so I guess we challenge anybody to come up and move things if you'd like. But we wanted to show you that this can work, that we can add value by analyzing things at early phases conceptually, so that we can help you make informed decisions. And we played with this and we moved a lot of things to make it work, and this works pretty well. We've also assigned costs to those, which I'm not going to say what the costs are today, but we've been able to come up with costs for that. There's a couple of other school districts that we've worked with recently that have similar situations, and so we said we wanted to talk to you using examples. And that's what we want to highlight here. So this is Langsburg Schools. And the bottom yellow is the existing competitive gym. Langsburg Schools had very similar goals for you, that they want to have an auxiliary gym, performing arts center, and a new entry and gathering space. Very similar goals. And so what we've learned there is if we can have adjacencies. So the auxiliary gym is next to the competitive gym, which is next to the locker room. So we have shared locker rooms, and there's cost savings there. The entry space is next to the performing arts center and the competitive gym, so that we have congregation space for all the events in the same space. And the infrastructure for each of these items is close to each other, so that there's just cost savings that can happen throughout those types of design decisions. You want to go to the next one? Another one that's current is Manistee Schools. Manistee Schools has a similar situation, only less components than what we're talking about here. Manistee already has, you see in the blue, they have a community aquatic center, and they have a very, very nice competitive gym with a running track. But they need an auxiliary gym because kids are going home at 10 o'clock at night from practices. So we position this so that we can have shared locker rooms, have shared adjacencies for different infrastructure, but also this allows the community aspect, the auxiliary gym and the aquatic center to be segregated from school operations during the day, so that we can have multiple generations in the building at the same time. So these are just examples, and just shows the thought process that we've gone through. My last item regarding this input, when we say we love to help with design support, is about commencing construction in 2020. So you've told us when we visited with you that these are some things that you would like to do. We've also said that you wish you could start construction in 2020 because you're anxious. So it takes creativity, because we have 3 separate funding sources. We have I guess I'll call it the Dunes Fund. Is that appropriate? Okay, that sounds better. You want to finish for me? And then you have operational budget that has fund balance. Yeah. And then potentially a bond issue. So there's 3 different funding sources, but they aren't all necessarily available at the same time. So creative ideas would be, if we could start construction on something in 2020, can we build something that is not at risk if the bond issue isn't supported by the community next May? And so a couple ideas that come to mind is the field house. Field house could be standalone. It's adjacent to the football field. It could be a standalone building permanently, or it could be attached if the rest of the program is supported. Same thing with the pool. Pool could be a standalone structure. The Performing Arts Center, maybe it's debatable, but I think we'd have to pick a couple components that could be funded with the current sources and have them be available to stand alone if necessary, if the community has a different vision. So those are just ideas. I think I better stop talking and turn it over to Scott.
Okay, so once we begin doing things on site, again, I'm a superintendent, so one of the big pieces of my roles is safety on site. Not just of the workers on site, but the community, the faculty, the staff, and most importantly, the students, of course, that are on site. I'll work with you guys to establish the plan that looks the best, that we have acceptable fencing, signage, and the training of the workers that are on the site, so that we don't want to mingle construction and school activities. We want to make sure they're kept separate. My job and part of this is to build you a facility without adversely affecting the education that's going on. Again, I've done this a number of times, do it regularly, and know what goes into doing it. Next slide. Harrison Park is an example. Grand Rapids Public Schools, where we did this. It was a project I managed. We did additions, renovations, and there was also the athletic components with this, and considerable site upgrades, similar to what you guys would, again, look at doing. Brad mentioned these bulletins that we do, snippets of where we're at. Again, it's an important part of safety as well, keeping the general community updated with what's going on, the progress, milestones that we've made, and then changes that are forthcoming to how do I get into school. We're going to change this drive, we're going to change this entrance, and make sure that information is relayed to everybody that's coming on site. Not just the staff that comes every day and probably knows halfway decent where it's at, but it's grandma that's coming for Grandparents' Day with just, once, twice a year, or the activities that go on at night, making sure that we have really good signage and that everybody knows where they can go and cannot go. That project was a 1.5 year long project, and the school was very pleased, and the principals were very complimentary on the work we had done, and it was a very good success story. Again, using a little bit of the liberties we did with some design guesses here, we looked at your site. Largely, we're in back. We want to make sure we point out that the drop-off drive in front, for students, buses, we're not impacting that. The drive that goes around back to the staff and student parking, the main entrance back here, that remains accessible the entire time. The parking for more the athletic areas, event parking, we're not going to affect that. We're going to isolate ourselves to that back quadrant, establish some really good fencing, just one construction entrance, and we're going to just contain ourselves back here so that, again, your facility can operate, and we'll do our thing back here, and we'll just stay separate from each other. Again, just some concepts that we've looked at, and we look forward to working with you with more detail on that.
Okay, that's our presentation. Hopefully that was the content that you wanted to see. We hope that you have questions. There's our agenda if you wanted to add anything to it. John, I didn't talk about fees yet. I thought maybe be specific of what you would like me to do on that. Or I could just review what I had given you in November.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to entertain other questions first? Or, okay, is there any other questions? Jenna?
One school in Michigan was on the news a couple of times for really thinking about safety as part of design. And I think they brought out that they had curved hallways and all sorts of things. Is that becoming customary?
So that's Fruitport. that you're
Yes,
referring
that
to,
was-
and that's very recent. And we were working with that architect, and that architect lives in Fruitport, so it was very passionate for him. What they're trying to do is create blind spots if there's an intruder or a shooter. So they're trying to create spaces where students and staff can hide. And we're doing the same thing in Ludington right now, trying to create spaces where staff and students can go and be out of line of sight of windows. In Ludington, one of the board members is a local sheriff. He's not a Mason County sheriff, he's a Muskegon sheriff, but he's very passionate about this. And so he's been at every design meeting, and every time he questions the amount of glass and the visibility for a shooter to see students is becoming very common. Same thing with secured entries. I would say almost every project that we work on now, if it doesn't already have secured entries, that would be part of the project. And in fact, starting tomorrow, I'm taking this off and putting blue jeans on and building a secured entry at Manistee High School. So very common.
I have a question about how much of your services are in-house versus using subs? Do you have any in-house services that you offer other than what you've, for the construction part?
Are you referring to trade type workers?
Yes.
Okay, so I understand the question. I just want to clarify. So Michigan School Code doesn't allow us to self-perform trade work when we're a construction manager for a school district. We have those in-house services. We love to do it. We do it when we work in the hospitals,
Okay.
but we're not allowed to do it here.
Okay.
Dan, I know this is, my apologies. Go ahead.
We're a pretty new board here, new administration in a lot of ways, and we're really excited. I think the community's really excited about Glen Schools becoming just the world-class school that we can be, and we all have a really real high vision, real great vision for that. But it's really not very clear as to what that vision is going to look like when it becomes structure or facilities that we're talking about tonight. So conceptually, we feel like we may be onto something, and I know John talked about things out might get interest. Fortunately, we're in a position where we feel like if we have the right amount of community support, and as well as we keep our federal impact aid coming, this is a project that could be realized. But I know myself, I feel like we're really far away from a tangible design, tangible concept. I could take to somebody and say, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? Is this something that you do want to support in Glen Schools? We have very interested families in our school district and very interested, constituents. It's a very high level of interest in the school, especially right now after the last 2 years. So have you had experience in a similar situation? How is it that you would approach the initial concepting piece? I understand you guys do some work and you find the architect, but is there, is this concept work pre-architect? And then how do you approach what services do you provide directly to really educate what we're hoping to do as a board? Where's the experience that are direct in that?
Okay, so I understand there's a lot of questions in there. I understand. I think the first thing you should do is you should come up and move one of the pieces. All you have to do is just peel the little sticky part off. Kalina, you may want to answer part of this, but I'd like to give it a try. I think it's really important. So John's worked in bond issues, Rick has, and maybe some of you have, but I know that both of them have. It's so important to enter the conversations with the community not being presumptuous. So I sort of was presumptuous tonight because we wanted to show an example, but we're really starting at zero. And it's so important to start at zero and go out into the community and ask the questions. So the first community meeting that we would have, there wouldn't be any drawing. At least that would be our recommendation. There would be some work sessions where we split up in small groups and go around the table and the report out about what are we seeing as the goals? What are the deficiencies? What is my neighbor telling me? And then build on those meetings. So every meeting should build on the past meeting. We should collect information there and come back and say, this is what we think we heard. Is this what we heard? Is it accurate? And then we start getting enough information to be able to create a drawing, a sketch, maybe a bubble diagram, maybe something like this, and then come back, is this what we heard? And that's how we get community support. That's how we build trust. We know that you all and John have trust now. We can tell just by being here that you already have trust. We need to help support that trust for this project. We can't build trust for you as board members and superintendent, but we can help build trust for this so that people feel like they've been heard. So that's one of the 10 questions that you asked.
Yeah, and the concepting work, is that done with the architect, or is that services that you guys can provide?
Yeah, it's really both. It's just been across the board. I would say to you that at some point, you've got to have both partners with you to have a comprehensive solution. We can go a long ways. I think it's a personal decision for you, and we can go either way. There's a lot of districts that we've built trust, and we've taken it a long ways before the architect comes on board. But we're anxious to have our partner there as soon as it's the right time.
Yeah, realistically, this concepting phase where we're bringing in the different components and the input sessions, what's a realistic timeline for that period?
If you were to do a bond issue, we would say you really need a year for the whole process. I mean, that you don't have to have a year, but that would be an ideal time. If you wanted to vote in May of 21, you would probably want to start community engagement in April, May of 20. And because you're going to lose some time over summer and then breaks. So the initial collection of data from community maybe takes 2 or 3 months. Then we have to process it. We have to build a model. Then we have to come back to them. And then there's another 2 or 3 months in there. So there's 6 to 8 months gone. And then what is Kalina's expertise is the last few months is campaign. So we've asked the community what they want. We've listened. We've gone back to them. Is this what we heard? If they say yes, if we feel like they say yes, then we go in sales mode. Really, then we go in if it's a May of 21 election, from February to May, it's selling the bond issue to the community, is showing this is what we think is this board and this superintendent said this is what's best for this district, based on what we've heard for you and knowing you. And I know from all the districts we work in that the 8 or 9 of you probably know more about this district than most, and that your perception of what you think the district needs probably won't change much through that input. We need to get the input, but you probably have a pretty accurate perception already. So that's kind of the timeline. Is that good? Kalina, do you want to add to that at all?
I have a question. What if we wanted there to be like solar panels and that kind of thing as part of the project? Is that like, have you had experience with that? Or is that sort of an after the build kind of piece?
No, we've had experience with wind turbines and solar panels and greenhouses, and we did a payback analysis on a single wind turbine one time, and it was a 75-year payback. So we figured, well, that really wasn't a great idea. But we have that question fairly regularly. Solar panels is one that comes up a lot, and that should be integrated into the design. Another similar thing is geothermal. People are very interested in geothermal because it's energy efficient. We want to explore the geothermal decision now in the early phases, so it's incorporated into the project, because all of the components of that building are tied together.
Have some of your projects been like LEED certified? I don't know all the different terms for that.
Yeah, so all of our offices are what? Yes.
Yeah. We also have the first triple platinum building ever built in the country in our Lansing corporate headquarters. All of our offices are certified LEED Gold. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
But that's only part of the answer you asked. So I would say we're committed to LEED certification. We're more committed to sustainable design, because that's really what it's all about. We have tons and tons of customers that want LEED certification. We have more customers now in the recent years that just want good sustainable design, not necessarily the certification.
I loved your answer about the community engagement. I love the idea of starting from zero and building with community input.
I appreciate that. We love doing that because it just builds trust and it builds community. And we said to you at the beginning, this is a chance to serve community through our work. We work a bunch of hours, and it's just great to be able to see success and see people united like that.
Our school is community, so that's, I believe, I know I can speak for myself, that's super important to engage our community members to see what they actually want to see in our school. And we've shared it very well.
Yeah, thank you. The greatest thing for Kalina and I is to see tears on election night when people say, all this for a year came together and we represented the community the way they wanted us to.
I guess I just had a question about, just segueing into the fees. What portion, how is the fee structure for that preliminary stuff structured?
Should I go with that one?
Let's go with that one.
All right. Okay, so on November 8th, I went back to my email. I sent John an email description of what I'd like to explain to you tonight. I have it with me, but I think I have it memorized. There's really three components of a construction manager's fees. There's just the CM fee, which is overhead and profit. There's the reimbursement of staff to supervise the work on site, and then there's general conditions. General conditions is things like toilets and dumpsters and someone to clean up. And we treat that as that's your money that we manage. We don't mark it up. We get competitive pricing on that. And it's that money is used to make the job site safe and efficient. So that's the general conditions part. The staff reimbursement is very much dictated by duration of the project and complexity to some degree. But our staff is reimbursed hourly. We turn that into a lump sum typically because that's what most people want, but it's calculated hourly based on the duration of the project. And it's just the staff necessary to, again, have the project safe. So for instance, Scott would be on site full time. We have this view that we should always have a supervisor here full-time on site when there's construction because of interaction with all of you and safety of the construction workers. So that's an example of the staff reimbursement. And then the CM fee. CM fee is the number that I could quantify, at least a range tonight. The staff reimbursement is hard to quantify because we don't really know what we're building. but the range for our CM fee is between 1.5% and 3% of the cost of the project. That's why did I give you a range? Because durations vary so much, and complexity may vary a lot. So what I would say to you, based on what we know here, or even some slight modification of it, almost certain that our CM fee would be 1.5% in this case. Majority of our fees are in that range. The 3%, if it went up that high, it would be extenuating circumstances such as a really long, drawn-out phasing plan or something very small. So as far as this work, the year of preparing for a construction project, it's really important that we defer those costs until you actually have money in place. Now, you have a unique situation, I realize, but if we were to do a bond issue, and so we've done bond issues with Rick before, the cost for that year is deferred until the bond issue can be voted on and approved, because most school districts, they just don't have fund balance to be able to pay for something like that. The majority of that cost is an investment in the district that we don't charge for, but some of the costs, such as the estimating, there's quite a bit of estimating, we would probably ask for reimbursement for that after the bond issue's passed. And so that's, I think, maybe an average number that I've asked for is like $12,000. So is that clear? Clear enough?
Fair enough.
John also asked about contract. I brought samples of the contract. Let me just hold it up. The reason I wanted to hold it up is there's an AIA industry standard contract that's most commonly used, and this is the American Institute of Architects that have developed it. So we would recommend something like this. I haven't ever asked John yet, is Troon your attorney?
They are.
And is SETSAG your insurer? So this doesn't matter anymore, because they already have standard contracts in place, both of them, for us to use. So if I was to draft that, I would have 10 edits. In the Troon and SETSAG contract, there's 150 edits. And so we've learned to live with them, no matter who you work with throughout the state. If it's a Troon contract, we're going to do what they tell us to do.
All right, then maybe one last question, and it's a question, Dan, that I asked you in the hallway as we were finishing our tour here a few weeks ago. With all the projects that you have and hopefully will have after the May bond votes coming up, what team could we expect to see on our project? Would it be the team that you brought tonight? Could it potentially be other site superintendents, other project managers? How do you see that playing out?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, because when we tell you we have big numbers, sometimes I wonder if that says we're not going to pay attention to you. And it's just the opposite. That's why I told you that we're regionally focused, and that's why I'm involved in every project. So what we want is for the staff that you've met tonight to be the people that would work for you. That's why we brought them, particularly Brad, because he lives in Petoskey. It feels like a great fit. And Scott, because of his skill set. If we leave here tonight and you say you like somebody different, then I'll try not to hurt their feelings and tell them. But that would be our preference, and we would like to commit staff to you. There would be others, depending on the magnitude of a project. If there was a bus garage, it would be 1.5 people. If there was a community center, it would be 2.5 to 3 people. So there probably would be another young project engineer that's a couple years out of college that's in the trailer doing processing and stuff like that.
Great, thank you. I know that if this project were to come to pass, Scott and I would be best friends.
I hope so.
Yes, because yeah, exactly.
He's difficult, though.
I think you even mentioned that one time. Yes, no, he's great. But that's really important, I know, to any superintendent when you take on a project that adds to your responsibilities, of course, as a CEO and a CFO for a district our size. And so knowing that Scott would be, the boots on the ground here is really important, at least for myself. It's going to be important to the board, but it's going to be really important for the superintendent that is a part of that project. So it's great to know. Thank you. It's it for me. Dan, you've answered everything. Board, anything else? Great job. Great job.
Me too.
John, if you'd like to introduce Joe?
Absolutely. Thank you. Wolgas, great to have you with us this evening. We had, imagine, a great presentation from the Christmas Company. We're looking forward to a great presentation as we close out the presentations from tonight. Project coordinator, is that what we're going with, Joe? Joe Powers, Joe, superintendent for Railing Schools. For a number of years, that's where I've known Joe from. Our kids played sports against each other. Board, I think you know that I've also had association with Schneider. So, with that, though, Joe, we're going to turn time over to you. I'd sure love to meet your team tonight. And then, as I shared with you, Chrisman went just over an hour, and so we'd ask you to be mindful of that. So we're going to look at no later than 8:30 or 8:35. With that said, the board will reserve the right to go as long as they want to. So, but if you would maintain that thought, they'll take it beyond that. Thanks, John.
And you'd like us to speak into the microphone because of the live stream, I would imagine, which is very exciting. That's neat. Last board meeting was the first one, live stream. Exciting, nice to involve your community. So I'm going to pass the microphone around so everyone can introduce themselves. John is correct. My title is project coordinator. I'm a retired superintendent. I was a superintendent at 2 different schools for 18 years or 19 school years. And so John and I were in the same league when he was at Elk Rapids and then also at East Jordan. So John and I have a very long history of mutual respect. And I think John's fantastic. What I like best about John, and I know this is not a John presentation, but the caring of kids. And that's what I've always been about. That's what John's about. And obviously that's what your board is about. The only reason you're considering projects like this is for your students. And the first thought should be students and the last thought should be students. So I'd like to pass it to Corey.
Hi, I am Corey Sursley. I've worked for the fine company of Wolgas Corporation for 15 years, and I've been in marketing for 21 years. And my role on the team would be to work on the bond campaign and laying out a brochure and helping to communicate what you're trying to do. So.
Hi, I'm David Mayville, owner of BMA Architects, located in Muskegon, Spring Lake, Michigan. I've worked in education design my entire career. I've owned BMA Architects since 2008. Before that, I was with 16 years with King Scott & Associates, which is a K-12 architect.
Hi, I'm Chad Trinka from Rhodes Engineering. I've been with Rhodes for 20 years, going to be 21 in next year. And I've been working with Dave, I know when he was at King Scott and with BMA, yes.
Good evening. My name's Steve Salyers. I'm from Hale, Michigan, went in the Air Force for 4 years, went to Arizona State, got a degree in construction, came back and went to work for Chrisman. Spent better part of the 90s with the Chrisman Company. Went down to Cincinnati for about 10 years and have been at Wolgas now for about 8. Started as a project manager, became the vice president of construction management about 4 years ago. Wolgast created their CM division back in 1994 specifically to do K-12 work. And so that's something that we're very familiar with. More recently, I got promoted to executive vice president. I now oversee the general contracting and design build divisions within Wolgast. But I'd like to say Jeff Bates is on vacation today. He was our presented project manager on the team. He couldn't be here this evening. Jeff's been with Wolgast probably twice as long as I have. He's LEED certified. He wishes he could be here. This has been looking forward to this presentation. It's used to take family vacations here and what have you. Even got a few pictures in my pocket. But have worked with Bill on other projects and appreciate the opportunity.
My name is Bill Schneider. I'm from a little town called Rose City. Been in construction now for about 43 years. The last 23 years of it alone is nothing but school construction here in the state of Michigan. I'm a licensed contractor in the state of Michigan, also in the state of Florida, and I have a building inspector's license through the Southern Building Congress. And again, looking forward to potentially doing the project with you guys. Again, I've been with Wolgast now for the last 19 years.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. We would be very excited and we would love to work for you if you so choose us. So what we wanted to bring to the table was a complete team, and that is why Dave and Chad have joined us today with BMA Architects and Roads Engineering out of Muskegon and Traverse City. So our Wolgast team, along with the design facet, is what we would like to present to Glen Lake, especially with the possibility of having your bus garage constructed this summer. Time is of the essence, and that's why we wanted to bring the complete team solution to you. Just quickly, 45 minutes. I understand and respect the time frame. We could talk for hours. Please feel free to interject. We do not want to just have a presentation. We'd love to have interaction, so please ask us or comment all the way through. This is part of our materials that we had provided you prior. We're very proud that really 80% of our work is from repeat customers. It's doing project after project after project. And we have worked in a tremendous number of school districts outstate. We do not get into the downriver market, and we concentrate on outstate. And our 2-year warranty period, I am familiar with a school district had an issue 20 years prior. We always stand by school districts. We are in the construction management division. We are focused on school districts. 95% of what we do is for K-12s. That is our wheelhouse. That is our focus. That is where we want to have the long view with that. And so the industry standard is 1 year. We do 2 years, but really it's forever. So with that, I skipped ahead just a moment. I know as superintendent that I like to get to the numbers immediately, and fees is extremely important. And so we have our professional service agreement here. Corey, would you mind handing that out, please? It's a little bit difficult. My voice is so loud, I'm not used to using a microphone. So this is our professional service agreement. This is what we present schools with. We have zero cost pre-bond services. Everything that we work for a school is the long view. We want a school to be happy today and tomorrow and 20 years in the future. So our standard professional fee is 2.5%. That is pretty much the industry standard. We're not the cheapest and we're not the most expensive. We're quality and we want to present quality to our clients. Staffing typically is about 4.5%. So the staffing is wholly dependent upon scope, schedule. Is it over 2 years, over 3 years? But we like to present school districts with a very strong number. So 2.5% is our fee, and then typically staffing ranges in the 4.5% range. And so the staffing is our project management team. Bill Snyder is our field manager, project manager that would be on the ground here. It's important also, I always like to know who am I going to deal with, not just a company, but a face. Bill is the person you'd be working with on a daily basis, as well as myself. I would mainly be focused on the campaign portion, meeting with the board, meeting with community members. If you want to entertain private donors, to foundations, naming opportunities, typically that'd be something I would do with Superintendent Hoover if he so chooses. So you would see Bill on the ground, you'd see me in public meetings and public forums. But also Steve Salyers is our project executive, and Jeff Bates was not able to attend today. But this is an example, and you can pass it around. This is 1 month of cost control manuals. What is vital, and I know it's not exciting, but no matter what, school districts are public entities. You must be above the board, transparent. That is 1 month paybook, and that's all the pay applications, all the requirements, the retention, all the certifications. That is what we do. And so our home office in Saginaw, all the financing, we control the budget. We make sure that we're reporting to the district every single month because that is our responsibility. And one of those numbers was always on time, on budget. That's what we take a lot of pride with. So, Leah, it would be Bill on an everyday manner. It would be the Saginaw office as far as all the paperwork, all the financing, all the accounting, as well as Jeff Bates is our K-12 specialist as a project manager. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dave to take over with the design aspect.
So just briefly, I want to mention the fee piece a little bit. Mr. Hoover, I gave something to you early on. The architect's design fee is basically based on complexity of the project. So once we get a scope, there's a spreadsheet there and it gives different percentages. And it's a little easier for these guys, they can just put a number to it. But obviously if we have auditoriums, I have rigging consultants, acoustical consultants, food service consultants, all that kind of adds into it. But I believe you still have that document I sent earlier. I can always send it again. So a little bit about BMA Architects. It was established in 1985 by Tim Bosma. I worked for a firm in Kalamazoo, which I'd mentioned for 16 years, King Scott & Associates, which is a K-12 educational firm. We had teamed up with Tim on a project in the Muskegon area, West Michigan Christian High School. I think you're from that area. Designed a beautiful facility, brand new, where Hackley Hospital is now. Long story short, they got a great deal, bought a building out by the airport. But I was working with Tim. I was the project architect and director managing the project, and I said, Tim, what are you doing with your firm? He's getting ready to retire. So in 2007, I became a partner. I joined the firm. A year later, 2008, I purchased the firm. Tim basically retired. Worked with him here and there. 2 months after I purchased the firm, the economy went right down. And I like to say I'm still here, but it was tough. So we had about 5 or 6 employees at the time. I was able to keep everyone there. And basically, because of my ties and history with the K-12 education, we kept as busy as we wanted to. So we bought Bosma Architects in 2008. Services were a full-service firm. We do not provide mechanical, electrical, plumbing design, and hence the relationship with Rhodes Engineering. I basically hire them probably 80% of my projects. I do a lot of design build. I do touch in, we have a subdivision where I actually build stuff as well. So I'm familiar with the construction administration process. I believe I worked with every construction manager in the state of Michigan, and I can tell you, you have a great group right here. So the project team would be BMA Architects. Again, as I've been doing this, I pull in partners that I work well with. So Karen Stauffer, Interiors, she is an excellent interior designer. Not only can she design, but she can also document. That's a big deal when you're dealing with omissions and so forth on drawings. Again, King Scott and Associates, I left on good terms. We've been partners ever since I left. In fact, I just finished, they hired me to manage and be the project architect for airport public schools south of the airport in Detroit area. So we still do a lot of work with those. A couple other firms I team up with. The one in Kalamazoo, Slocum Architects, I team up with them. I pull in these expertise or partners, as you will, when their expertise meets what we're looking for. And we work back and forth. Again, mentioned Rhodes Engineering. Catalyst Partners, one thing I'm going to talk about in the next few slides is LEED certification, or a green building. Catalyst Partners is a company I work with out of Grand Rapids. They essentially handle all the paperwork for that LEED design. Has anyone here ever filled out a grant application? It's not only what you put down, it's how you put it down. These guys know how to do this. I ran the first project for the LEED paperwork, and I went to my higher-ups. I said, oh, look, we have to hire somebody for this because it's an art. So that firm basically does that. And again, we will team up with acoustical consultants, theatrical consultants, rigging consultants, which we had on Hastings, and food service. So just briefly, I'm going to kind of walk through the design process a little bit. So if we are fortunate enough for you to hire us, I would sit down. I always bring my interior designer in because she needs to hear all this as well. And again, I don't know if this is my term, but I like it, but integrated project delivery. This guy right here is going to be involved in programming because he always has these great ideas, and other Wolgas team members, and he'll say stuff like at our last meeting when we're sitting there, David, why can't we use the pool for the retention of the fire protection water system? You know, well, that's a good question. I need to look at that. You can't for safety reasons, but this is the kind of stuff that these guys bring to the table. So it's not just us giving directions to contractors and say, build it this way. It's, hey, what are your ideas? And you share that information with us before we put it on paper. So what we would do is we'd sit down, we program with you, and what we do is what we call master planning. We need to sell this to the community. So what are we hearing from you? What do we need to hear from that community? And let's get a master plan. Now let's be careful. Let's not put too much detail into it, because if you design something too much and they don't like it, well, it hurts you. So there's a fine art on how much information you provide and the right amount of information, but what you're really trying to do is listen to that community. Okay, we know what we need for this school. What are you guys looking for? Because this is your building as well. We go through the master planning, and then that turns into that public involvement, which I mentioned. We have to listen to that community member. And then we have what I call cost checks. And we did have a slide up here, a Gantt chart, and I'm notorious for using these things. You guys are going to know exactly when we need decisions and when meetings are. But in one of the big things is a cost check, because we all know it's all about money all the time. That's a joke. Anyways, but it kind of is, right? Because if you can't afford it and you bid something and you got to go back and redesign, or the term is value engineer it, you got to make sure there's value in that engineering and redesign and so on and so forth. So this is where we rely on these guys to get these numbers right, so when we do bid this community, and is it the right construction type and process and detailing for the local trades for that community. That's also a big deal. So once we get that public involvement, we go out for the bond, and that's their expertise. We're going to sell this to the community. We're going to get that yes vote. We move into what we call schematic design. This is where we take that concept drawing and we do all the pretty pictures. You're going to get the 3D renderings. We can do walkthroughs. I do have BIM in-house, building information modeling. We do have that capability. There's some other programs that we use that are a little more user-friendly. You can kick this stuff out and do some neat things with it. And then obviously again, schematic design. We don't stop, but we hand that over to these guys, and let's do that cost check. Are we still on track? And that's where this guy gets into those drawings. And he calls me up about every other day. Hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. You know, what are you thinking about this? And we're talking all the time. And then we move right into construction documents. There's actually one more in between there called design development. Call it 50% construction document. Again, another cost check. Hey, we're putting together the door teals, all the detail work, which is what I enjoy. And are we meeting that cost expectation? Again, you're going to see me, the owner of BMA Architects, the project architects. I've ran multi-million-dollar, many of this stuff. I'm going to be involved from the start to the beginning. It's not going to be a situation where it's going to be handed down to a C architect and junior staff. One of the big items is construction administration. I'm going to be there because that's what I like to do. I like to work. Bill and I got a great relationship back and forth. How many times have I got something called Join Me Interactive on screen. How many times have we pull something up and figure out a problem right together on that screen? So that's the relationship that we're going to do right through there. Again, the U.S. Green Building Council has something called LEED, which is Leadership in Energy Environmental Design. And I'm not going to focus too much on this. There's one more slide, but the number one here is save money. And obviously, when you're designing an efficient building, you're saving money. But also, there's cost to get that plaque on the wall and design this. So just as an example, one of these other projects in the next slide here I'm going to show you. I think I'm done with this one. But it was a LEED Gold building, and I am a LEED certified professional. Your group has LEED certified professionals on it. Our entire team has LEED certified professionals. Is Catalyst, well, I just tell you, we paid them around $30,000 to do the paperwork on that building. Part of that process, though, is that they calculate that energy design and they orchestrate all this for rebates. At the end of the day, it was a while after this job was done, but at the end of the day, we returned a check back to Muskegon Community College. I believe it was around $40,000. So essentially, that paid for their services to get the LEED certification process. And you still have all of that green design, efficient energy efficiency, that you're going to be saving money year after year after year after year. And there is a premium because we are doing stuff like geothermal heating systems. Again, just a couple projects. The one on the right there is actually out in Massachusetts. That one was a while back. You can see the photovoltaics there. That was actually CHIPS, which is Collaborative for High Performance School, which ironically is they turned that program is what morphed into the LEED program that is used all over the United States right now. And again, Muskegon Community College, that was a LEED Gold building, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's kind of a big deal to get a LEED Gold certification. We're shooting for silver, but we kept on getting more and more points here. And again, I just wanted to highlight some of the buildings that Wolgast had worked on. And this is a certified or silver? Certified, which is the basic level for green design. And I'm going to hand the microphone and flicker over to the Chad here.
I think I need the flicker, but we'll take it anyway.
All right.
Okay, so a little bit about roads. It was started in Muskegon, Michigan in 1973. by Joe Rhodes, and Randy Rhodes came on board in '75. And once Randy eventually bought the business from his dad and opened our Traverse City office in 1987, and we've been providing engineering services out of both offices throughout Michigan and the United States ever since we opened our second office. We are 16 staff of engineers, designers, drafters, and administrative personnel. We have 5 licensed engineers in Michigan, and the principals at Rhodes are licensed in 45 states. We've been involved in 80+ designs in K through 12 and higher education, mostly in Michigan. We do have some work in New York. We're Mercy College in New York and Long Island University. We've done some work with those higher education out of state. And you see we won a Energy Innovation Award. That was back in mid-'80s for a cogeneration plant that we put in at Mercy Hospital in Muskegon. But we have since torn that out and replaced it with a boiler plant since the cost of gas, natural gas, was so high. So that's a background on Rhodes Engineering.
Thank you. Well, we have so much to speak about, but we absolutely want to stay within your time frame. So on time, on budget, we work for a lot of school districts. Our best recommendation is ask anyone that we work for. And we could give you a list, and if you would like, we absolutely can. But we love involving students in the project. That's something Bill always tries to do, is have students be involved in the construction management process. Why? Because everything we do is education, everything. And 95% of our work, and $2 billion, it's $2 billion plus, is just our CM division. And this is our team. Steve Salyers is the vice president. Jeff Bates is our K-12. He was unable to make it tonight, and he is also our lead professional. And then Bill is field operations, and then Lisa, and then Tim is the head accountant for that cost control manual. And Corey is very humble, but she does all of the marketing materials. And she is a tremendous, tremendous resource for us and for you if you choose to select us. And then this is Dave's team.
Thank you. So yeah, just briefly, myself, my father retired when he was 49, moved to Oscoda, Michigan, and was bored, so we started a construction company. So I've been in commercial construction ever since I've been a teenager. Richard DeBoer, he was in construction and actually went in back in the architecture. He's been working with me for 10 years. You're not going to meet a guy that works, I mean, this guy, he works day and night. It's quite amazing. And again, Karen Stauffer, when I find these great team members, I keep them. And we worked well together. It makes a big difference. A little different than when you would have a large firm and you have to work with their staff because they're on staff and you have to pay them. I pull in the team members that make sense. And again, Clarissa Mayville, she is a teacher. She teaches French and Spanish. I pulled her back into my firm and said, I need some help, and you can handle the management of the accounts and so on. So I couldn't do this without her.
Okay, so the gentleman you see there would be on your team, on your project. Randy has 44 years of experience. That's a ton of knowledge to offer for your projects. He would be the lead mechanical. He'd be assisted by Bill Fries, who is out of our Traverse City office, and he has 30 plus years experience. Not only in the office, but he also worked for a large mechanical contractor in Traverse City. And Larry Vink, he would handle all the piping systems. He is our expert piper. Wastewater, medical gas, storm. He's been at it for 34 years. Most of that has been with roads. I think all 34 has been with roads. And then I would handle the electrical design. And Phil would assist me. He's in our Traverse City office. And we both have 20 plus years experience. And Phil is also a licensed electrician, has his journeyman's card. And that would be our staff. I guess I would probably be the point for all of our staff that would be interacting with Dave, but really we just call Dave when we have issues or questions or need something resolved on our plans or drawings. That would be our team.
Can I just add two quick little things? So, I worked with Mr. Rhodes here. I'd argue he's one of the best engineers I worked with in the state of Michigan, and I worked with a lot of them. And then you have another guy in the right-hand corner, Larry Vink. Larry's not a licensed engineer, but he's better. Simple as that. They don't have to be licensed to be a good engineer.
And this is really the biggest part of our presentation that we want to show you. These are the people that will be working for you, not a unknown company, but that's something that we value, that this is our team that would be working for your school district. This is just a list of the schools. Feel free to check with any of them. And then this is, we're going to show you a lot of pictures if there's any questions that you have on all of those. The cost control is extremely, extremely important, and that can't be understated. We work as a team throughout the entirety of the project, so it's not Dave's responsibility or Chad's responsibility or Bill's responsibility. It's our responsibility to serve your school district, and we want you to be able to be comfortable with that at all times. You know, the bond campaign, that's something that I would work directly with John at the beginning, but whether it's Snapchat or Twitter or videos or campaigns or in person, there are a multitude of strategies to use. We share what has been successful in other communities, in other campaigns, but that is something that we'd want to work directly with you and your facility team in order to devise a strategy. I know that it's often a distinct possibility, perhaps we want to try to meet with individual donors. I had mentioned earlier about naming rights. That's all very important to individuals because it's legacy. It's legacy for themselves, it's legacy for the students, it's legacy for your 4 communities. And so I'm going to hand it off to Dave and Bill. They work directly on Hastings, and they wanted to highlight that project.
So this is where Joe's going to have to watch me because I could go all night.
We have 13 minutes.
So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but this is the Hastings High School auditorium. I'll get to the sizes in a minute. We have a ton of slides in here just to show you some pictures. But this is where this man and I worked very closely together. I think we talked 20 times a day. Anyways.
One of the things that impressed me the most about working with Dave is that when we were on a project, things come up. A lot of times you'll have an architectural firm that's so high and mighty on their own design that there can't be anything ever done differently. I would present something to Dave, and if it made sense, number one, it was easier to do and it saved money. The receptiveness that I had from an architectural firm, I've never had that receptiveness before, which is always huge on a project of any size.
Yeah, no, I appreciated your input. So again, you're flipping through this stuff. Here's some of the pictures we showed. A lot of challenges to get all those seats in here. The main floor is 530 seats. The balcony of, I think it was 318. over 800 seats with chairs that we can set in this facility. Acoustically, we worked, stay right there for a minute, please. No, the next one. Acoustically, so we worked with a theatrical consultant out of California. We had the time when we called this guy. Acoustical consultant out of Chicago. Again, these are these team members that you bring in. Just a couple items, challenges. I brought one with me. So, not a challenge, but see that? There's your building addition right there. 850 seat auditorium, stair system right here. Here's your existing building. We took a huge facility and put it in 3 sides into an existing building. There's a lot going on with the fire separations and how you have to design something like that. I had 3 different elevations, how many multiple different construction types did we have between here, here, and here, and here? Just really quick, every time you pedestrian access from point B to point A, there is a portal designed. Both buildings can burn down. This portal would still be there. It's never going to happen, and I think they're eventually going to change the code, but it had to be designed that way. And all the way from how the rebar connects it right on down the line. Some interesting stuff here. We had a mechanical room, again, for acoustics. Second floor, we took over a couple classrooms, so we fed that auditorium through here. Little challenges with this BCC and getting that process through. Long story short, I kind of felt like an attorney. I had to put everything together and go to the head guy and, yep, you're absolutely right, you can do it. But I couldn't have done it without this guy's help in all the detail work and that communication that you have with an inspector, because I'm not there every day. I relied on him to get me the right information on how to present it, again, how to present it correctly to these guys. We got it through, no problems. I think we have some more slides here. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mention the assistant superintendent from Hastings sent us a nice note just a couple weeks ago. This is the Grand Rapids Orchestra, just performed in this auditorium a month ago. I believe it was. Said it was a wonderful experience.
So again, this is Culinary Institute of Michigan, 40,000 square foot, right downtown Muskegon, one of the biggest culinary schools in the state of Michigan. Again, we did work with a food service consultant on this particular one. He was out of New York. But this building, and go ahead and you can slide through that. This building was not a green building, but it was LEED certifiable. I like to use. We had like 5 years from the time we completed it to actually get that certification. We did things like we sized the roof for a green roof, vegetated roof system on top. We didn't do anything like geothermal systems and that type of stuff. But just give you some of the ideas and design that I worked on in this building. And then athletics, there's a ton of slides here. This is Chelsea School District. I've worked on multiple gymnasiums, indoor tracks, weight rooms. Some of this stuff is projects that Wolgast had completed. Our point is that we've done this. Huge list on the athletic piece.
One of the things that I'd like to say too, and Joe had mentioned a little bit about it, pretty much every school project that I've gone to is I'll try to take a junior or a senior who's looking at potentially going into engineering or into architectural and take them on as kind of like an assistant. They'll come through 1 to 2 hours a day and literally go through the job site with me. Northview Schools, where some of these pictures are from, the young lady that spent a year with me eventually went on and got an architectural degree, and then because of her experience with her sub-degree to go with that was in construction management as her minor. But again, that's kind of one of those things that for myself, I just enjoy being able to give that opportunity back to the districts.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing with NC RISA. We did a robotics lab, and we met a lot of the children here and walked them through the drawings and presented to them twice, which was kind of neat. This is just some ideas on, this is a project I did, Kalamazoo Center for the Healing Arts. I actually won a design award for it. But I was thinking, something here, I think that architectural language in a front entrance or something may make some sense. Again, we have to listen to the community. Health Science Center, again, this was 38,000 square foot. Health Science Center for Baker College. Other projects I worked on for community spaces, this is Chelsea High School Auditorium. And again, this is before BMA. The other ones were all BMA. This is when I worked for King Scott. Again, there's a Jacobson's apparel store. Everybody remember Jacobson's? Anyways, they went on. This is downtown Kalamazoo. We took it was a building for local arts organizations. This is a black box theater. We took the roof off. We increased it 2 stories high and designed a black box theater for that, amongst other art organizations in this facility. And again, Galesburg, Augusta community area. That's a high school did. Welcome Center, Baker College. And I think this is your cue.
So one item is in regard to if you do want to build your bus garage this coming summer, is time is a significant factor. Just to give you an idea, Bill already checked with Leelanau County for local plan review, and that is an option. The state of Michigan typically will take up to 100 days for plan review, which would be very, very difficult to get construction completed this summer. That is a requirement by the state of Michigan. School districts have a separate life safety code, and it's very strict. But one item they do allow the client, and that would be you, I would guide you through that process, but to request local plan review. And some counties do it, some cities do it. Bill already checked into that. And so that would be... And so that's something that immediately we would encourage, because we are here ready to serve you, your students, and your communities, and we will begin work tomorrow if you so choose. So this is our plan for our success. This is a little different project as far as it's a merge of funds, and that's something that I will assist Superintendent Hoover with as much as he wants, whether it's with the attorneys or the bond or the financial advisors strategizing different financing structures. And so this is our team that we have assembled to serve you, and I was pretty close, John. It was 8:13, so I was wanting to make sure that we had plenty of time for questions, because it's really not about the presentation versus the interaction. So we'd love to communicate with you. All of our team members are here ready to answer any or all of your questions, comments.
Go ahead.
Is this always the group of people that you work with? No.
No. As far as the architect, engineers, we work with a variety of architects, engineers, as well as they work with a variety of companies. This was the team that we assembled and we had presented to your facility team, which was beginning in November, I believe. And in regard to the time frame, especially because of Bureau of Construction codes, time was of the essence. And instead of making the district choose a construction manager and then choose a architect design team, that's something that we had talked to John about. Would he like to hear a complete proposal? And so that's why we did it, because of time. There was someone else.
I had a question about, I think that the bus garage aside, for this bigger project, I think we really need some help with getting a read on what the community wants. And I'm wondering how that process might work and if that's something you would assist us with.
Certainly, absolutely. And this is, we would be involved right from the get-go. And so with that, there's a couple of different ways. You can do in-person meetings, community forums. What I've found out, community forums are very poorly attended, and really the people you want to hear from do not attend. Surveys actually are pretty good. Having surveys, and that is either something, we always like to say, do you want this to be a student project? Not that you have to, but even one school district we're working for, they didn't want to pay for a drone survey, but they had a class of students that did drones. But in this level, because it's a very, very large idea, concept, I would encourage actually having a scientific survey study done. That would provide you information. Do they support the Performance Center? Do they support the Arts Institute? Do they support the field house, etc.? Because with that scientific survey, it will actually provide you with percentages. 75% of the community supports a performance center, etc. So that would be where I would suggest starting out with, and yes, we would assist with that.
Would there be, because there's no, we do have some funds available, and there wouldn't be a big wait time for the bond issue. Are there any cost savings? It's, if, you know, since we potentially could spend our money on, I mean, I think everyone usually has to work on a bond issue, but are there any potential cost savings to us by having the cash on hand?
So, kind of. And as far as dollars, getting construction done, it doesn't matter where the dollars comes from. There's bond issuance costs, there's fees associated with every bond sale. And so the less that you sell, you're going to save on interest. You're going to save on bond issuance costs. Those are small numbers. If we're talking about $30 million, that's small. But there is a savings with that. Anything that you can use with cash, and that's how I would describe it, cash and bonds, would actually provide you a quicker turnaround, and the most significant savings would be in interest. So,
Joe, there was a question that was asked to our first group that I thought was really important to have been asked. When you take a look at the potential of a larger project beyond the bus garage, but potentially an event center that includes a gymnasium, a field house, a performance center, an auditorium, the time frame of when you get that started, potential bond issue, and start of construction. Just when you see that, making sure it's done right, not worrying about any artificial time limits we might have talked about in some of our earlier meetings. What do you see as just the best time frame to really do it right?
So, as far as, let's talk about this in different phases. Your bus garage, we can start producing that tomorrow. Your performance center, at least the very earliest would be the summer of 2021, because in regard to your bond, if the vote was done in May, you wouldn't have the funds unless you want to pay for pre-design. We have had a few schools do that. They pay for pre-design. That's not paid to us, but that's paid to the design team, because it's all about hours invested. I would say 2021 would be the absolute earliest to have a good, strong design. Because Lisa's question, I'm going to read into a little bit more. You're very well going to want to involve different stakeholder groups, and that includes the design. Well, to involve more people takes more time. And so if you had a successful May election...
Are you talking May of 20 or May of 21?
I was talking about May of 20 because that's what we had discussed in our last.
Do you believe that's reasonable, Joe?
As long as you go non-qualified, yes.
But I think the survey, I was thinking, Lisa, about May of 20, because we had talked about that in our facility meeting. Thereby, I think it'd be important to have that data very quickly, and that meaning hiring a professional survey company. I have encouraged every school to stay away from next November. I think it's going to be crazy. I'm dreading it already. But we actually have quite a few schools going in August. It really depends on the level the board wants to involve the stakeholders in the design aspect. That's why I think for your district, the scientific survey would be a very important piece to kind of define the timetable as well. But May would be pushing it.
Sorry, Joe.
Yes, it's possible.
Sorry. So after the
Yes, sir.
survey, you compile the survey and the results, and we have it.
Mhm.
What do you then do with that in terms of reselling that back to the community? What's that activity look like from your point of view? Because in a survey situation, we would have it, but it would not be communicated, as a concept immediately. So what's the time? How much time what's the process? Is that the marketing component that comes in?
It absolutely is, but let's go back to John's question or statement in regard, the longer that you build that support, thereby May would not be an ideal time. The more that you involve those stakeholders, you're going to increase your level of support, but also you're going to see very quickly divergent ideas. And thereby, it's important for the board to lead that process. I would suggest that you share the scientific results from the survey, whether it's with your communiques or your website, and so the public has that. I also like it because it provides the board coverage. Well, 70% of our respondents said they want a performance center arena. This is why we're focusing our energies right now in our stakeholder groups in this arena. So the process, the more you involve stakeholders, the more time, but the campaign, in my mind, begins as soon as you say we want a building project. And so that would begin now. The May question, it's doable. You would have to have a pretty good sense of your community and what they would support. I would say August would be a better time frame. But also, if you're not in a hurry, May of 21 is definitely possible. So I don't think I answered all of your question, Jason. It is something that I determine that strategy with the superintendent and the facility team in regard to, I don't want to come in and say, do this. I like to say, here's what other schools have done, here's the pros, here's the cons, because it really has to be a customized campaign for Glen Lake Community Schools.
Yeah, and I think that, we're very interested in moving forward in really discovery what we want to do. I don't know that time, the idea that we needed to have this particular project move very quickly. I think we want it to move right, and then also think about what the workload is, and how that's supported, and that's part that we're really interested in is the service aspect of that, and like the right amount of time for your team to be able to help with the concept, help deliver it back, get the right inputs and deliver it back to the communities so we feel really confident. That's the right time. So I certainly hope, from my point of view at least, we didn't put a time thing where this has got to be done in May and you're trying to make it fit. I'd much rather feel like, hey, this is what you're most comfortable with as a team, saying this is the amount of time that we really work best in. This is our sweet spot, because your sweet spot's going to end up saving us energy, time, and getting it right. And so, that's, I think, what we're kind of trying to feel is that in a large project like that, what's the timeline and what's the way you like to work?
So ideally, May 21 would be better.
Okay.
I was trying to respond to what I thought was the district's
that's why I want to
time frame.
Because we have some urgent, I think we would say more urgent and probably more palatable projects like the bus garage, I think that's one that is probably new for our community to hear about, but that's about taking care of something we already have potentially. And I think that's a very easily supported thing to show that we're going to take care and be responsible for what we have. That's an early project for us that we could get moving on right away. Yeah. The larger project, I think we really want to have care in terms of concepting, and we really need the concepting help as much as anything. And that timing, the pre-construction timing and the design phase is probably more important to us to be right. And as a board, we're still trying to discover that. I hope I'm not speaking on a term for you guys, but the idea would be we want your team to feel comfortable and not have to come up with something very, very quick.
So hearing that, thank you. You gave me a greater perspective on the wants and the needs. I think it's great to get community leaders that support the project. And regardless, you are board members, John is a superintendent, to hear community members support this project carries a tremendous amount of weight. And so identifying those community leaders that would be supporters, champions of the cause, then you let them lead the process once the board defines this is the direction we want to go in. That all takes time, and that goes back to my earlier statement about stakeholders. It depends the level of stakeholders that you, the board, want to involve. The greater you have involvement, the greater chance for success. So honestly, if you're not in a hurry, I'd tell you right now, May 21 would be a great target for your bigger picture concepts. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to offer a little bit of a different view. I think with our community, we know a lot of the community stakeholders. They already raise scholarship money for us. It would be very easy to take our survey results and go to the Glen Arbor Women's Club, go to the Maple City Lions Club, go to the Empire Area Council. And in doing that, our parents are an easy target to reach, and we can have meetings where they are informed and asked for their opinions and that sort of thing. But these other stakeholders are so invested in helping our community that if we did outreach to them, I believe August would be a very doable deed. And they're going to be having monthly meetings every month between now and August. And to be able to hit a number of those and do marketing, just to me, feels like it would be a very strong possibility.
What I have found in my experience is listening is the most important.
Yeah.
So if you're saying you have that level of engagement, which is very, very high, we can start right away. And we cannot predetermine a time frame versus these are our options. What do you think? What do you as community members want? And then we can report back to the board in its entirety and then devise a strategy with that. But Virginia, what you're saying is an extremely engaged community.
We have wonderful community members who spend the better part of the year doing projects to help our students. They're very invested in, plans that are being made here, and I just think they're very approachable, and it's something that might not be as evident in another community, but it is very strong here.
I had mentioned non-qualified. That's a technical aspect, whether a school district goes qualified or non-qualified. Non-qualified means that you use your bond rating, your health of your school district. It's a whole lot of aspects. Standard & Poor's are involved. A non-qualified election, the quickest turnaround is about 2.5 months. The other aspect is qualified. I don't feel like you need that. John and I talked briefly about it, and we are kind of focused on non-qualified. I typically did non-qualified. I didn't like involving the state, but that was a little bit of my my board's perspective. They just wanted to handle things themselves. Non-qualified takes about 6 months. So that is not, has to be in the frontal lobe. I just want to make sure to share that time frame with you. So if you're going non-qualified and you are of the financial status with your taxable value, a non-qualified can be decided in as little as 2.5 months. So whether that's May of 20, August of 20, or May of 21. But the engagement, we'll be able to hear. We'll be able to hear very quickly. I do think, hiring a scientific survey just gives the board more data to make decisions. And that's also, going back to Jason's point, if you want to share that with your stakeholders, then you get their feedback about the data. And then it ultimately comes back to the board to decide.
Also, we can get that survey, that feedback back to us, and do a quick master plan. So put that report in something tangible that you can sit down with these groups and saying, here's what the feedback says, here's the report, and here's what that might look like over here. Even if it's massing or bubble diagrams, it's still square footage, and it's still something on a piece of paper that somebody can point to.
Would you do some of the community engagement first and have some of the listening sessions and then follow up with a scientific survey kind of after that piece, so that then we end up sort of with data that then can help us make decisions and move along? Or you're suggesting the first step is the scientific survey and then going to the community?
I ultimately would defer to you. You know your communities the best. If Lisa's question was about deciding maybe what direction to go in, do you feel like there's support for a pool, number one, a performance center, number two, a field house, number three? Do you feel like maybe there's 3 competing projects? Thereby, I would get the scientific data. Thereby, when you go to the community groups, and I would be a part of that with you, with other board members or Superintendent Hoover, then you can share with those stakeholder groups, this is the data, how do you feel about that? If you feel like we want a pool, number one, then I would go to the stakeholder groups first, then support it with data. So that's why, I like to design a campaign with or in conjunction with the facility team, because you have insights that no outsider has.
Jenna, I like your idea of sort of taking it to the groups and to their meetings. I think that would be very well received.
Well, yes. I think we talked about this in our facility team meeting. The only demographic increasing in northern Michigan is the 55 plus. What do they want? Quality of life, services, engagement, exercises, services. I remember Charlevoix. I used to teach in Charlevoix. They put the pool in. Why? One of the biggest aspects was exercise, non-impact exercise. Huge support for that. My in-laws still live in Charlevoix and all their multitude of relatives. But the quality of life in the seniors in that 55 plus demographic is what I see with every school I work with. Walking tracks, pools, indoor aerobics. The 55 plus vote about 90%. They are the other demographic, along with your students, that are a huge numbers. They pass or reject a campaign. So Steve Salyers said that gyms, athletic facilities are very, very hot. I'll tell you, every single project we're doing has a walking track, has a fitness center, and it's aerobics, it's not weight. So how do you balance that with student need? You have weights for your runner-up football team, which had exciting games, but then you also have a community fitness arena. I also get asked all the time, well, how do you pay for it? Do we charge? I say no. They're paying through their taxes. It's a mutual benefit for your students. But again, that's a local decision. That's up to the local. But that's why we see all of our projects now are attacking the 55 plus demographic. And what I'm hearing is you have a pretty engaged, active community group. And they're probably very much. Correct. And they're living here because Northern Michigan's awesome. It's a great place to live. And the quality of life here, and whether you're a senior citizen or you're raising a family, it's quality of life. And that's what's most important to people. So, use it. Use it to design your project.
Yeah, I think from the beginning, bringing the community in has been an important part of the project. Making it a project, a space that is as much for the community as for the students.
I mean, I told Jason, I love this library. I mean, how cool is it? And when we were here, kids are in little pods. This is preparing the kids for their future, their experience right now in college. I have 3 kids in college, so I've got a great opportunity to see it in action. But inviting arenas are for our little kids and our big kids and our parents and our senior citizens. You know, the Performance Center, if you end up choosing to do that, community groups will use it for everything. Travelogue, whatever, because it's a community space.
So important, community. Yes.
Community.
Support.
Exactly. And that's why involving the stakeholders right away, Brooke, awesome. You know, let them say what they want. That's why I said I think the greatest skill is to listen. Go there and say, hey, what would you like out of your school? So, all right. Any other questions for any of us? Well, thank you very much. We love being here. We'd love to work for you. And we'd love to serve the students of your school district and all the members of your 4 communities. So we appreciate being here. I have a tremendous level of respect for that gentleman over there. I've known John for many, many years. Bill's known John for many, many years. And we wanted to show you the people that would be working for you. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Well, board, why don't we stretch our legs for a few minutes?
This
very
is set.
appropriate, board. I've been through this. I think this is now the 5th time I've been through this. And presentation by Christmas I've ever seen. That was a home run tonight. That was a home run.
John, why do you say that?
I felt they were innovative. I felt they were more polished. I felt they were ready. I think they focused on their company. I think the second presentation focused more on the architect and engineering firms than I would have liked to have seen. I think I would have liked to had more of wall gas being presented than. It's wonderful. I understand the team concept and all of that, but really, folks, you are here to, find out more about the construction company. Now, again, it's good that they wanted to show you the players. I thought their presentation regarding, in terms of Chrisman's, was really spot on regarding community involvement, use of community forums. I've only used a survey twice. I've used it twice. Once at Alanson, one at Elk Rapids. They're both good measurements, absolutely. It depends on who you use. They can get a little pricey. And then but really they're only effective if the people they're surveying have knowledge of what the project could be. So I would see it differently. I think the community forums are critical. And then if there's a need for a survey after that, fine, and it can give you some scientific data, and that's all well and good, but give them enough to be able to give responses on the survey that are meaningful and helpful. After what we experienced with Jason and with the administrative cabinet, I'd let him run every single one of those forums if he's willing and up to it, because he's going to be able to take them, those forums, through a process with, and whether we're using Bethany's little red and orange and green dots or whatever Jason would feel appropriate. I think we're going to walk out of there with a pretty clear sense of what people are looking for, wanting for. And so you can, I mean, starting tabula rasa is a good way to go. You don't need to set preconceived notions with anyone. Yet, it's really clear when I talk to anybody and everybody about our facilities and what they'd like to see, and it always comes down, for them, the gym is a default. Gotta have it. And then it's the auditorium and the pool.
I've heard the pool.
After that, you know, if we could do something to really, you know, again, magnify the arts, if it's a gallery or something of that nature, or if that's somehow built into a part of the performance center. I don't know that there's going to be huge diversity, but the good thing is they'll provide us with insights and thoughts that we haven't considered. And again, I've told you this before, I love it. I love those forums. I think they're a blast. You learn so much. You get a real sense of what your community wants and where they want the culture to go. You know, you talk about taking public opinion baths, Lincoln, awesome. They're just so great. And so, folks, please know I'm not trying to create any preconceived thoughts for you, but I was completely underwhelmed by the second presentation. I just, and you know, I mean, I think the world of two of them. The others I've met for the first time tonight, but I really felt the Chrisman presentation for everything that they provide, the services that would be there, the expertise, the team, if that team can get put together. The Bill Schneiders of the world, they're a pain in the butt to contractors because they're perfectionists. They make sure that everything is just the way the owner wants it to be. And I, you know, if you were to choose Chrisman, whether tonight or another night, I know my conversation with Scott would be, I need you to protect my board. I need you to protect my community. So that means if you have to be, well, they're our advocate. If we're having trouble with electrical or plumbing, I don't have to go talk to those people. You don't need to talk to them. That's the CMs, that's the site supervisor's responsibility. They go represent us. And I would just need to know, and with Scott having over 30 years in the business, I'd like to think that they can say things the right way, but also say it in a way that is no nonsense, and let's move this forward. I think we could say the right things without being, you know, mean or anything crazy like that, because they represent us, right? So we want the way they go about those presentations or those conversations to represent us in a way that we believe is dignified and appropriate. Yet we need them to be firm, and we need them to stand their ground for what's best for our community. So, anyways,
Well,
board.
I'll just play a little devil's advocate. First of all, I don't think we can go wrong with either one of these companies.
Oh, they're both solid.
So I'm not worried about that. However, I just, you know, Lee and I were just saying it's going to be a hard choice, and I said, well, I really felt like the second presentation was more linear, and it, you know, it moved through the process more clearly. Rick had asked a question about the design going through the process, and I felt like the Chrisman company just kind of muddled that. And I felt like the architect in this presentation just delineated it very, very clearly. The other thing that kind of made me laugh, at one point they talked about how adept they were at technology, but the presentation was a technology train wreck. it wasn't smooth. And I thought, well, and if you've got people whose job it's going to be to help you communicate to others, I just felt like tonight's communication, I didn't feel like a home run at all to me. And in our sessions prior, I thought they came up short in both presentations.
I thought Walgas did a really nice job when they were meeting with us in the smaller group, the Facilities Finance Committee, if you will. But isn't it wonderful that we have this many people and you get to see it from different points on the compass? I think that's why you have these types of presentations. For me, maybe my expectations were higher for a company that I've worked with before, and I felt that those expectations were less than maybe what I had created in my own mind.
I don't know, I felt like there were so many, I just see it as a more onerous process with Chrisman than I do with, well, I just feel like, oh, okay, I see, you already have an engineering company picked out, you already have an architect picked out, and that whole process of choosing an architect and choosing all those things seems onerous to me, and it seems like if we have to go through all of that as a preliminary thing to getting anything done, there's no chance we're going to get our bus garage done this summer. So, if we're talking about, do we really want to get this done this summer, I feel like really aren't going to have much of a chance with Chrisman, but maybe they're separate entities. Maybe, maybe the bus garage is one thing and then the other project is something, someone else. I don't know, but I just felt more, I liked meeting who they would use. Personally, I just felt, just going through the building process right now and having trouble with subcontractors, it's like, oh, you have somebody, oh, good. I don't have to,
Thank you, Lisa, because that's the first time that I've had a construction company make a presentation where they brought an architect and an engineering firm. I've not had that happen before, so that is unique.
I was surprised with that.
I guess.
If I could mention just a couple things. The architect, though, the architecture, choosing process is actually fun.
Is what?
It's fun.
Oh, okay.
It is. Because
For
what you get, if you get 2 or 3 of them that are interested in the project, you get some really neat things that you get to look at and say, ooh, that's kind of interesting, that's kind of interesting, I mean, you really get some creative thought process from these people that's fun to look at. And, we ended up with an architect on the last project I worked with Dan on, and the first guy's first name was Leonardo. And he lived up to that name. He was really good.
Well, in a situation like that, are you moving ahead with like sort of the community stuff and the surveying and simultaneously? That's what I would
You're doing
think.
it simultaneously.
So
That's what's best.
Yeah.
I thought the marketing person from Chrisman, Kalina, I think her personality would fit well for our communities. I wish they would have given Corey, their marketing person, more time with the microphone to get a little better sense of what she would have brought.
If I could, mention what you heard from Chrisman in terms of the quality level or whatever, they do it like that. They are good. They are spot on and they do a good job. We did a really neat project. The last one I did North Muskegon, or we did at North Muskegon, and it was a gym. It was a performing arts center. It was total renovation of the heating. We put air conditioning in, heated sidewalks. Did all kinds of stuff. And this is 15 years ago probably. And they came in under. We were able to do more than what we expected to do. They did a good job.
And what's interesting is I could echo that with Walgas too. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about good companies, isn't it,
Yeah.
Rick? I mean, very similar, heated sidewalks, brand new
But
elementary school,
Also to mention what you're saying.
and come in under budget.
I agree with you. I think that they that's why I asked them the question, because I couldn't see it, linear like you were talking about.
Yeah.
When they left, I had hit the restroom down there, and I saw them there, and I said, I said, you really shouldn't be putting anything up there that we can't read.
And I thought that too.
I mean, we're assuming something, and they're just pictures, but, when you do a PowerPoint, from what I've read, and I don't do PowerPoints, but, 6 things on a PowerPoint. That's it. Don't put any more than that. You load these things up. You can't read it. You don't have it in front of you. You don't want it in front of you because you'll be reading that. You won't be listening. So I thought the presentation was not very good. But what they presented, because I know them, they're really good. They're good at what they do.
And
we
just
can't go wrong with either one of them. Probably.
That's correct.
I don't like the fact that they're coming with an architect. I really think that we need to have a chance to see a few different ideas from people as to how this thing could look.
The architect is my favorite part.
What did you say?
I really liked the architect. I thought he was the most, I liked the marketing person from the first group and the architect from the second group very much. And I think that was what was concerning to me about the Wolf Gas presentation is I wasn't exactly sure what we were getting from that company. I know what we were getting from the architect and from the engineering firm, but I wasn't super clear about what they would deliver for us. And my other question is it okay if we were to go with Chrisman to ask that architect to come back, or is that a no-no?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dave's a free agent.
Yeah,
Dave Mayville, yeah.
I very much like the architect. He seemed very approachable to me. But I also think that either of these organizations will do an amazing job.
This is the first time I heard from either of the companies, having not been part of the other meetings, but I liked the Chrisman presentation. I actually thought they did a really nice job with the presentation. I think maybe I just liked a lot of the way they talked about the project. I liked their focus on all of the planning. I thought they had a really thoughtful and realistic approach to the importance of all of the time spent planning and gathering input. The fact that they have this huge planning department. With respect to I liked that tornado graph. Do you remember that comment about the tornado graph? I thought that was sort of, I don't know why that struck me. Maybe it was just very visual and I thought that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, I do think they're both good. I liked the professional sort of polished feel of the Chrisman presentation. And
one of the most important aspects for our community will be how are we using, again, potentially natural resources? Are we using, to become LEED? LEED certified, as you know, is the lowest, and then silver and gold. And when Chrisman was saying, and did I hear them correctly saying all of their projects are at the very minimum LEED gold?
Yeah.
I believe so.
All of their offices.
Their offices.
Their own offices.
Their own offices are platinum certified.
But
I might have misunderstood, and I can get that clarified.
Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought too, Jenna.
But
my apologies, but I was just going to say that's really important to our community to have that type of talent, qualifications, and success. Again, not that Wolgas couldn't move to that or the architect.
And they built it into their presentation to their credit, to the Wolgast credit. It was right. It was absolutely a part of their presentation, whereas it wasn't clear that that was such a huge part of what Chrisman does with the sustainable building.
I was going to say, Brooke, you had asked that question about, what they would do to be environmentally, and Chrisman began telling us about that when you expressed some interest. I thought it was meaningful that Wolgast brought it up without a question.
It was just one of their...
It was baked in.
Well, Dave Mayfield did.
Yeah. But that's,
Right, part of their presentation, yes.
Part of their presentation.
That has really been a big part of Dave's architectural
work.
His work and his marketing is the lead certification, moving up towards gold, yeah.
That can be one of
Or at
the,
least
just one of the parameters of
We
our
would sure,
project.
we would sure
you know.
hope so.
I think most construction at this point is targeted towards LEED certified as it is, so I think that is a question of whether or not we want the expense to have the acknowledgement of it versus the practical,
The sustainable piece.
the things that are making that. I'm just gonna talk about this a little bit different. And I think for us, it's a question of what we as a board would like our involvement to be, because I think those two companies presented something very different in terms of what our responsibility is and what John's responsibility is throughout the project. And so, having met with Wolgas now 3 times, I see that as a group of people who know how to get things done. Okay, you set them on a project and they're gonna get through it. And if speed was the issue, to me, that would be a pretty easy decision, because I think they would be fast and they would get it done in a way that we asked them to do. But that's presumptive on a couple of things, that we know what we want to do and that speed is of the essence. I think if this is our teammate, and this is the team that is going to help us get where we want to go, what they support us with to bring to the community. Right now we're Wolgast. What was Wolgast in their toolbox for us to bring to the community was a survey, and not much else. And so and I felt like Chrisman had much deeper resources and thought processes and how we would be supported as a board. Now John would be supported as a superintendent to talk to the community. And while that might be a slower process, again, I can't tell if that's important to us or not as a group. I think we really need to ask that question again of ourselves. But certainly if I felt like I needed to go out to a community member in the next week or two and I needed support, Chrisman was going to offer me more support. Better documentation, better things to show, better support on the back end. And I think that's, to me, there was a substantial difference between the two. Versus if I looked at Wolgast, I think someone here or a group of people here would have to do a lot of steering. We would have onus on us as a board to say, these are the things we need to create. These are the forms we need to come up with to slow or get that into their process. I just didn't feel like that was a real important part of their process. Fair or not fair, I don't know. And I personally tried to clarify that with the timeline, say, hey, let's back up on the timeline to hear what the process would be if it was extended. And they still didn't fill the gap very, very well for me. So to me, again, it's about how we want to work and what we look like through that work. And Chrisman's polished, man, and they seem very open to me.
And I don't want to, as a board member, assume what our community wants. And when I was listening to both companies, I felt like Chrisman was spot on with the marketing, trying to get how they're going to do their avenue of finding out what our Glen Lake community wants. I did not
start from scratch.
Yeah, and I didn't feel the warm when we were just going to go stamp and send out a community survey. I felt that was, in my opinion, I want to take the personal touch. I don't want to put a date on this. I want to do it the right way with community involvement. And I don't want to assume anything. I would hope that they assume our community members want this project, but if I want it and the majority of the community doesn't, then that's our answer. And I just felt like Chrisman was polished, like what Jason
I think one of the strengths of our school, I think that's well said, Corey. I think one of the strengths of our school district is the personal attention that we give to our students and our families.
And I love that.
To do anything less than that, I think, would be outside of what they expect and what we have told them we believe so deeply in. Again, not that a survey instrument couldn't be used, but it would come after, in my counsel to you, board, after significant work with the community, face to face, making that as personal as they deserve and we believe we want to do.
What we are as community. Like I had said earlier, school is community, community is the school. for my own, I will speak for myself, that's very important to me. I want to know what our community really wants. And I think Crispin did hit it out of the park with that.
I like the idea of hearing like what items the community would like to see, and then in the survey, being able to attach price tags to the different items and say, okay, so you want a pool and you want this, here's what these things cost and here's what they cost to maintain. Do you still want that? Knowing this information, now let's, so first we gather, and I think I'm getting in the weeds here, but first we gather information to kind of know like what the thing looks like, and then the survey could be to like really
If
have them
needed
rank
at all.
order with the detail,
If needed at all. In fact, that's usually one of the things you'll find in a forum is they'll ultimately say, well, this is all nice and well and good, but what's this going to cost?
Right.
Right, what's the square footage cost going to be for a gym, for a performance center and all?
Yeah.
And those are numbers readily obtained. It just depends on, well, things like a gym. It's not just a gym floor, it's how many bleacher seats you want. How big do you want your locker rooms? How big do you want your athletic training room? Right, all those types of things. Are you going to put a track in a field house, or is the track going to go above a gymnasium? Which most people, although that was all the rage for a while, are finding that is not the most effective use of track space or gym space. Yet, it's an option, right? So those are all things that get thrown on the table. You talk about it, and you just, and that's not in the weeds at all.
Okay.
It's not in the weeds at all. No, 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 no. And as we've talked about, I think we've kind of hit that piano key, I think, pretty well the last few board meetings. Just get it right. No matter what, let's just get this right, because folks, it's going to be here for another 80 years, right? So we've got to make sure that it's what the community wants, but even beyond that, it's what the community can afford, right? And so that also determines the scope of your project. Does that make sense? Don't say this is what we want. Will you help pay more than? No, 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 no. This is what we can afford, board. Great. We'll make the project fit within what you believe we can afford. The only time I ever, as I've shared with you, the only time I went outside of that parameter with a community committee, the bond issue went down, and I asked.
I was telling Brooke that the one millage that went down when I was involved, and there were like 4 of them, we didn't involve the community enough. We did not, get their opinion as to whether they would be willing to pay for something like that.
What I can share with you, if you'd like to know just a little number, is that what was presented by Chrisman tonight, if that square footage were used, minus the pool, which does get thrown in, we, with the existing 1.07 mil, for only 10 years, we'd only have to look at 0.8 to 0.9 of a mil increase. And that would be with us using the federal impact aid dollars, which we've accrued, and using 8 million of the 15 million that we have in fund balance. Yes. So that's where I felt Crispin really took a lot of initiative. I thought they really tried to map out what the scope of the project could look like on our grounds, how that would fit, taking a look at traffic flow, and you heard Dan, he didn't want to throw that number out and all, but yet I just share that with you because, again, I think they went that next step. I think they showed that initiative. I thought Walgas showed initiative bringing in the architect and the engineer. They did. I mean, obviously, they both really want to be associated with Glen Lake because, folks, Glen Lake's a gem. You get your name associated with the Glen Lake Community Schools, you just hit a home run as a construction management firm, an architect, or an engineering firm. You just got involved with, the best of the best.
When we look at the Wolgast percentage too, it's fixed 2.5.
Yeah, I was wondering what.
Be careful with those numbers, folks.
I know,
Be
because
careful.
then you have 4.5
Wolgas is
on
going to
it.
tell you 7% fixed, and Chrisman's going to go 1.5, but then you've got all kinds of float numbers after that. So
more.
Please know, it's still going to come in around 7% total. I mean, that's been my experience, folks. Jason, is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the initial numbers there, you just, as
Yeah.
long as they're in the scope and range and they sound
Yeah.
like what I'm talking about, that's as good as you're gonna get out of this conversation.
Yeah.
As is customary for our board, I'm not hearing anyone who's feeling so one way or the other that we can't, I think, move on a decision. I mean, if I'm in my head doing a count right now, I think a decision can be made. Do others feel that way?
I do, I don't know, I mean, but I'm,
But our initial is bus garage, correct? Or this,
That would be their whatever company you would choose would be their primary
that would
focus.
what we'd start with, and then
Has
from
to
there,
happen.
we would go from the community center support and what that.
Potentially the team room
Softball, the team
Mhm,
room, okay.
for softball and soccer. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would like to say, thank you again, Jordan, for filming all this, because I think this will be invaluable to staff and to community members in understanding the thinking and the presentations.
I appreciate when you said, and Rick, I think you were the voice for the board on this, both companies would do a great job. Your goal, board, is to figure out who's going to do the best job, because both would do a great job.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
We'll go with that.
That's correct. I mean, there's obviously nothing about tonight that it has to happen tonight.
And I would say, just in keeping in mind with our priority of being the bus garage, which I think is a very tangible, very nice project, I mean, frankly, for us to just understand workflow, that, in some ways, I think both of these companies understand that we respect them at this point. And if there was a real problem here early on with the way that work is done on this very clean project, we will not be so far down the road that that the other company wouldn't be interested in talking about an opportunity to come back and talk about this. So I think we're really set up for where this decision gives us an opportunity to see who we believe in, and if there's something wrong there, we're not going to be caught out. We're not going to be caught too far out on a limb here.
observation.
We're just not. So makes me feel easier about this.
I make a motion that we hire the Chrisman Company as our construction management firm for future projects.
I second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations. That's a big decision.
Thank you. You feel good about it?
I do. I'd love Chrisman to hire Bill Schneider. He's that good. I have that much trust in him. But we will put our trust in Scott, and Jason, again, a great observation. We'll be a lot wiser by the time we get to September, folks.
And it's
when
got to
we
work
see
for you,
what-
John, so if it's not working, we need to know.
I surely will. Yes, and thank you. But I do. I love that. That'll give us a great trial run with how that team does come together and the support that they promised, and we'll hold them to it. Absolutely. I'll make phone calls on the board's behalf to Joe Powers and Dan Lamore on my way home tonight, if that's agreeable to the board. That's all right. And if indeed a facility finance committee is established by the board president, as soon as we can get that committee together, we need to sit down with this construction company and start putting together a timeline. I'm leaving Saturday to go be with kids and grandkids, but if we can meet this week, even by phone conference, great. again, not trying to rush anything, but they're busy, and we need to get on their schedule just like they need to get on ours. That's all. Please no, not forcing any issues, just
Well, I think
get
it's
it on the calendar.
something we need to talk about too, is the committee issue.
Mhm.
We need to talk about what this, if we're gonna have a finance committee or a finance and construction facilities committee, or, how that would look. Because initially, we kind of talked about doing a finance committee to dive deep into kind of the budget issue, but I think if you feel like a committee structure is necessary, maybe for the construction projects, the facilities projects, then that's a little bit different. Those are traditionally had been two separate committees, and so I don't know, I just think we need to discuss it about what
The two are so intimately entwined with each other. I've not had it any other way, but obviously, board, I'll work with whatever you designate. The one, there are two risks when you go with committees. One is that the committee does all the work, it's brought to the board, there's no discussion, and it's rubber stamped. The other one is there's an hour and a half committee meeting that comes to the full board, and you go through the whole thing again for another hour and a half, right? And so it's finding that balance. And please know, if that's your desire, we'll find it. I've had great success with the committee structure, but it's with ground rules, right? It's with parameters, because we never want the 4 people that aren't on the facility finance committee to feel left out and not being a part of those discussions, without it becoming just the facility finance committee in the whole. Otherwise, don't hold the subcommittee meeting. Just hold it with everyone and continue on the way we've done it for the last 5 months. So I think those types of parameters, ground rules, I think, again, great discussion, and it'll really set a foundation for us as to how you want to move forward.
What would it look like if it was just if it was a full board? I mean, would that be sort of like workshops? I mean, I guess I'm wondering what
What we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean,
We just continue to bring things, and we just take it as we go along. So for instance, with a budget amendment, with a committee, the budget amendment, all of the fine detail would be gone through with the facility finance committee. I mean, literally, right down to every line item if they wanted to. At the full board level, we would give you kind of what we sent out to you recently. Just like, what, Friday, was it?
Yes.
Friday? And then, if the full board wanted greater detail, they can look to Leanne or me, but then they could also look to members of the committee. And be able to have them, as your peer group, if you will, be able to be that voice because I hold both the CEO and CFO roles in a district. Of course, it's my job to know all of that, and I do. But the more you get to know it, the more my administrative cabinet gets to know it, the safer we are, because we have, again, more talent taking a look at every single dollar that comes in and goes out on the district.
With a construction project, I don't know, I can't imagine the board trying to manage that in the board setting. It would drive us insane. Some of the decisions that would be made are just, they're not, this is not the forum to do that. I really would think that a committee would be the best suited to handle the questions, as much as just the delay that we naturally have by only meeting twice a month, and a committee potentially needing to get together on the ground right away to make some decisions, even in the small project like the bus garage. I just don't see that it being effective. That would be a very onerous process. It would be really slow and painful. So I would really suggest that maybe if we didn't have a construction project, that'd be one thing, but having one seems like we would just want a focused group of people who could make decisions as they're really needed. That to me is a driving.
And then Jason, obviously we can inform the other 4 of those decisions, solicit any input if there is some way to get it. Otherwise, think the committee structure does allow us to move more quickly, because there are going to be times that decisions have to be made.
Yeah, and it might be stuff like door handles and door colors and stuff like this that the board does not, this is not for the whole board to go through. I just, that's,
One thing I would like to, if we do a committee, a dedicated committee of this, would it be videoed? Could we have,
The committee meetings are public meetings too.
yes,
They
so
are.
it would be live streamed and then recorded? Because prior to our current board, there were often times that they were making a lot of, not just in general, not naming anybody, but there was, as if you weren't on a specific committee, there was definitely conversation that was had that I felt like should have been shared throughout the whole member board, and it wasn't. So if there was a live stream, then the four, because we legally could be there, but you can't have conversation, you could at least play it back to see what was said.
Yeah.
And I think then we would be aware of conversation.
Board, if you so chose, of course, because any committee meetings are posted meetings, and a public is invited. And so you can invite them through the technology.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
That's the only thing I would suggest, because me personally, I felt like there were some decisions being made that just was not talked about for time or whatever reasons. So that's my only.
I don't know how many people at the table have the time to be involved, and I, as a retired person, do have time to be involved. My worry is, I think I would be valuable to the committee in working toward the marketing side of figuring out, where we need to go, but I feel like I'll be useless without a lot of tutoring in some of the financial aspects. And, I don't know, I'm throwing that out.
We can be together.
All right.
The building, I'm like, yeah, I'm very interested in it, but I don't think that would be
A gift,
I'd
yeah.
love to be on.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering, whether there wouldn't be some phasing in and phasing out. I don't know.
There surely can be, board. Again, it's yours. It's whatever you'd like it to be.
I guess I was thinking that if we started with the finance committee and then facilities was everybody to begin with, Jason, we're going to get to a point where it's going to get down to some nitty gritty, but at least to begin with in the whole process of how we're going to go about doing this. And then we can, splinter off, when we start getting down to some of the details that, that not everybody needs to be sitting around talking about.
But you'd be made fully privy of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the part of that.
Well, then, in that case, though, then who meets with Chrisman prior to Saturday? If we're all,
Well, at the very least, Bethany and I would be sitting down or over the phone with Dan to just start getting some calendar dates for January set aside at the very least. And anyone else that would have time that could join us, great, perfect. Main thing is just get on the calendar.
Just a practical thing, I think when do you think these committee meetings would probably, I think, Rick, I know you're going to be on this committee. You've expressed the strongest interests, you have the most experience, so I think universally we all want you on that committee. When do you see these committee meetings taking place? And perhaps, because I think, I'd love to do it, I don't know that time-wise, and I think it makes a difference, trying to be effective. We need people who, because I trust all of you. Anyone who's on that committee, I feel completely comfortable, and if it's videotaped and I want to go back and look at it, so I think it's, for us, it's not necessarily who, it's what's most practical, perhaps.
I would like to see the finance committee meet like the Wednesday before the next board meeting where we're going to approve the payables, so that we have a chance to review everything, talk about budget, ask questions. There's time for John and Leanne to come back with answers before we have, and then I would, you know, as the treasurer, I would then do a report, you know, at that meeting and talk about the finances. It wouldn't be part of the consent agenda. It
That'd
would
be about
separate
4 p.m.
I'm sorry?
That'd be about 4 p.m. Those meetings versus 7 a.m. Rick, is that?
Whatever works for you guys. I'm.
Because I'll be
I'm pretty
conference
much-
calling in on the 7 a.m. meetings.
What's
yes.
that?
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
that's
If it's
what
at
I'm
7 in the
saying,
morning.
because
And then that immediately-
times of day make a
Yes.
difference, you know, and so we, you know, those were not good times, so.
Yeah, that was a little out of context. Sorry. I'm all for an
I missed
afternoon
something
meeting.
there. I didn't
Yeah.
realize you
No.
had meetings at 7 in the morning.
They were at 7 a.m.
Okay,
They were, yeah.
all right.
For-
Well, I could do that because the dog wakes me up very early these days. But
So given that, you know, Wednesdays are a good day,
I'm out.
who might be interested here?
Wednesday at 4 sounds like a good time.
I
Now-
second that emotion. Good. Thank you so
All right.
much. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so then that,
Ooh.
and I'm okay. I'm out of that.
Well, no, but, I mean, but if you wanted to be on, like, it would, could you do
No, I've,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but John also is driving from Mount Rapids, so.
No.
I totally get that.
No, 5 o'clock would be an early time, so that's great. Whatever works best for the board.
I'm pretty much available even though I work, you know, but I work from home, so I can get here. So, and if I know ahead of time, I just plan on it. So, you know, if you need 5 o'clock or whatever, or 5:30, then that's what we do.
I personally would need 5:30 if I was to be on this committee, but who's in interest of this committee?
I think our regular meeting is the first,
this,
right?
just the
Our
second
business meeting is the first Monday of the month?
which is really the second of the month, right?
It is, the second?
It's the first
Second
meeting,
and
but the
fourth?
second Monday.
Second Monday, so it would be on the first Wednesday of the,
Are you talking about when we pay our bills,
yeah.
the approval?
No, when we approve them on the,
We approve
board
them at
approves them.
the,
First and second meeting. Yep. We approve bills like
Oh.
we did tonight. You approve bills tonight in the consent agenda.
but normally the idea was that it was gonna be
Our regular meeting,
a regular
that
meeting.
second Monday.
It's the second.
Uh-huh.
first Wednesday.
I see that Jason is. I see he's interested. I see Jason wants to be on.
I think it's
show
interesting, but I know
interest,
that you have a
I
lot
just-
of
the
interest.
time of day, it just
Yeah.
depends, like, truly, if I trust everybody on this board, I have trust, so I don't, there's nothing that I can't play back in video.
I feel like I could be an alternate for somebody, for either one of you two, but like, I'm not,
Either
I think
all
you,
or
I think you
none.
both have more interest, so.
You two are doing it, right? I mean, we're here. You guys are doing it?
Are we agreed, Corey, Leah, and Rick are the finance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
love that.
perfect.
Everybody else will be,
All right.
live streamed and recorded.
So,
Just as a clarification, when looking at a calendar, it's not necessarily the first Wednesday. Like, for instance, in January, a Wednesday falls on the 1st, and the Wednesday before the first board meeting is actually the second Wednesday. So you just want to make it the Wednesday before the regular board meeting. Just clarifying. Thank you.
Okay, Wednesday. At 5:30, okay?
Right here.
Right there. That also is one, but that is a different one.
Absolutely, you're good, you're good. You do have one trade specific, yes.
All right, do we have any public, do we have to do anything officially for that? We just named a committee, we don't have to vote or anything, okay. Any public comment? I don't think so, so. All right,
Steve,
all right.
any public comment? Jordan?
All right,
Good.
meeting's adjourned.
All right. Great meeting, you guys. Good job.